Planning director is running late. All right.
Just kind of, bringing a few more things before we can move it.
Is Dennis bringing over materials that you need?
Materials?
Is he bringing? Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's got the box for the.
Okay.
You guys all have what you need, right?
Yep. I just want to make sure I don't want to start. Hi, Dennis. Okay. Good evening. I'd like to call the Wednesday, May 27th, 2026 meeting of the Town of Coventry Planning Commission to order. It is now 6:37. At this time, we'll do a determination of a quorum. I'll call the roll. Mr. Member Price,
Here.
Member De Silva,
Here.
Member Delude,
Here.
Member Lewis,
Here.
Secretary Burke.
Here.
Vice Chairman Studley,
Here.
and the chair is here. Mr. Kenny and Mr. Reyes are both out and excused for tonight, so we have 7, and that's enough for a quorum. The emergency evacuation plan, in the unlikely event there's an emergency and we have to vacate the building or the room, it's the doors that you came into the rear. If for some reason those are blocked, we have a door over here on the side, which will take you out to the back lot. At this time, I'd like to ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the April 29th, 2026 meeting. I can entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for the April 29th Planning Commission meeting.
Secretary Burke moves approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Member De Silva. Do we have any discussion, corrections, or anything else? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is a new application for discussion, vote, or other action. It's the Janelle Art Studio at 420 Washington Street, Assessors Plat 56, Lot 77 in the VMC zone. Is there anyone here for the applicant? Yes, sir. Come on up to the microphone. You could just tell us a little bit about your project, please. She needs your name and address for the record, please.
There we
Pull the
go.
mic up.
My name is Michael Janelle. My address is 10 Brassy Court, Coventry, Rhode Island. Welcome.
So what we have in front of us is an application to construct a small art studio on a 6,221 square foot lot. And you are seeking zoning variances from the minimum required landscape buffer, the minimum number of required loading spaces for a commercial building, the minimum distance between the curb cut and the intersection, the minimum distance between the subject curb cut and the closest abutting curb cut, and relief from providing the engineering report to accompany the above curb cut request. Maybe you'd start off by just telling us a little bit for the benefit. I mean, we've all read the planning director's report, what it is that you plan on actually doing on the site.
What I'm doing is I plan on putting up an art studio for myself. I'm not running a business out of it. I'm just doing, it's just a passion that I've had my whole life. So it's basically just going to be a hobby shop. So that's really all I'm going to do over there. So it's not going to generate a lot of traffic because it's just going to be me there.
And this, we all got this rendering, just so you know what we have. This is pretty much representative of what you plan to put up.
Correct.
And I also noted that there is, you don't plan on making any water or sewer connections at this time.
That's not my plan, no.
Okay. Anyone on the board have any questions or comments?
So no sewer connection or water connection whatsoever for the building?
I wasn't planning on, I talked to Kent County Water already, about, I mean, but, I'm not going to be living there. So, I mean, it's just a hobby shop. So I could basically just put a Poland Springs bottle in there to drink water. And, I was going to use a composite toilet in there if I had to go to the bathroom. So basically that was all I was intending to do.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but Brassy Court, is that a condominium?
Yes.
Yeah, so you don't have a place that you could create your own art studio over there.
No, I lived in Richmond and I sold my home a couple of years ago and moved over to the condos to downsize. So I had a big garage that I did artwork
Right.
with. So I sold the property. So now I don't have
Right.
space.
So that's what this is. This basically is, it's a
Exactly.
workshop, but it's off-site because you can't put it where you live.
Exactly.
Okay.
I guess part of my concern too is it looks. I understand your intent, but it looks too much like something that's going to be an automotive garage down the road or something for, and not you. You're coming and saying your intent, but how long, what does the next person do with it, right? Once it's built and it's in that area. That's my concern.
Anyone else?
Just curious, it is a small lot. You'll be right close to neighbors at night. You'll do a lot of welding, I'm assuming, or
Yep.
banging, kind of loud processes. Are you going to be doing this late at night or?
No, I wouldn't be there late at night. I mean, I'm semi-retired, so most of the time it might be on a weekend or during the day, but it's not going to be late at night. I mean, I'm getting old, so
Yep,
I'm in my
that's-
60s, so I'm not looking to be there and hang out over there.
Okay.
It's
just wanted to
truly
make
just
sure.
for a passion of something that I love to do. And it's not really going to be a big garage. So I understand what you're saying about an automotive thing down the road possibly, because if I did sell the place 10, 15, 20 years from now, but it's probably only a 2-car garage. It's very small. It's not really going to be that big.
Yeah, I'm thinking it might, could be used for self-storage or something along that line. Would anything restrict the use if Mr. Janelle decides to sell his property down the line?
If he was to change the use of the structure, there's an application triggered through planning. So if for whatever reason, he or a future landowner seeks to do a auto repair, first off, we'd say, is that use allowed in the zone? And then we would do a review. It would trigger a review through TRC. And we would make sure, how many parking spaces do you need? How does site circulation work? Can fire trucks still get on and off the property successful? So what you're really approving isn't the building as an envelope to seek any use inside. You're approving this use at this intensity for this building. Someone wants to change the use and make it more intensive, they're back in front of the town, and we have the ability to say, we don't feel good about this. You're overwhelming the site. You're cutting into your buffer to create the parking you need. This isn't working.
What I'm thinking is like storing of a vehicle, right? A collector hobby. Industrial storage, like some of the ones we've seen go up throughout town, where landscaping needs a place to park his trucks and keep his stuff during the day. And then because he can't, same thing, maybe he works out, he has a condo, or self-storage. Just I'm going to rent it out to someone that needs a place to keep their personal property. Any of those uses going to trigger?
Any change of use. So if he was to do self-storage, which I would say is probably a lower intensity use amongst the range of allowed uses here, he would still have to, whoever it was, would have to bring the application to the town. We would ask for an understanding of how this fits for site planning. The change in use, in my opinion, allows us the ability to say, the previous relief that was granted might be specific to that use. For example, a new use, we might say that this use should have a loading zone or a loading dock, whereas another use wouldn't. And we might say, we might have no problem offering a loading dock relief again, but a new use does bring those questions back. We're giving this relief because of the use it's associated with. So there is the concept of change in use could require us to look at some of these provisions again, and a new use might have to seek relief again. It's a tiny lot. I do think the use you brought up of a commercial condo, that is probably a lower intensity use. It would still trigger a process, and we'd still want to understand how it's working. We'd probably still be very concerned with activity on the site, the level of on and off, comings and goings, and traffic. And so other uses we might be in a position where we want a traffic study. For this particular use, I don't know if traffic jumps out to me as requiring a study, but other uses, they may, because this is tight against other intersections. We might want to know how traffic turning movements are happening. There'd be a range of different questions.
And as far as the site improvements as shown, I think it's, what is it, crushed stone you're going to use for your driveway? Or gravel, something?
Yes.
And the metal building, that's all perfectly acceptable.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was reviewed for stormwater compliance. The engineer is satisfied, and he is using more impervious surfaces than perhaps we would allow for a different range of uses because it's such a low intensity use. We're not going to ask to pave a driveway, which would add impervious, create stormwater issues for this level of activity on the site. So
Another use could trigger that.
another use could, yeah, we could say it's inappropriate to assume that larger vehicles that might be coming on and off of a commercial condo site, like a plumber who's got a big truck, we might say that's not appropriate. That kind of truck might affect it differently. Those would be questions we could only answer once an applicant was in front of us presenting their case. But no matter what, if they're changing the use away from Art Studio, it triggers the ability for the town to say, you have to come in front of planning and demonstrate that your use fits on the site and how you're going to arrange the improvements on the site.
But Dan, therein lies the problem that we have, right? Property sells. We have it all over this town, right? Where a property sells and somebody is supposed to come get a change permit, but they don't. And then we don't find out either until the business is gone, until somebody complains, because there is no mechanism that forces somebody when a property is sold from one person to another and he changes the use to come forward and say, I want to change the use. He's supposed to, but that doesn't mean he does. And we have tons of these situations, and that's why you asked that question. There is nothing that triggers it other than the person coming to the town saying, I am changing the use. Or he gets, or a neighbor calls, or we find out. And again, this is aimed at you, sir. This is across the board in town. Things like this happen all the time, and we don't have a mechanism. And maybe we should. Maybe that makes things easier for us, where if there's a mechanism that when a piece of property is sold, it triggers something that says, all right, they're going to change the use, and now they have to come back before us, and we can deny that or make it alter, but there is no mechanism right now.
That's a fair point. The one thing that does often trigger it would be a building permit. Someone that's coming into this is may have a desire to, change the electrical arrangement, put up a wall, change plumbing. Now we have a building permit, and then the building permit office understands, hey, what are we doing here? And they understand that going from one commercial use to another commercial use is a change in use. But no, I agree that that can be a challenge. There are times where we're chasing people and we're explaining that the change in use that they did a month ago is something that they needed to permit with us. And then we tell them, you still need to permit with us. If we need documents to prove this out, you're still going to need it. We do have the ability to say a cease and desist on the use. We could tell them you have to stop your operation today while we permit this use. But it's a fair point. There's definitely plenty of commercial operations in town where it might be the middle of a strip mall. Something changes from a barber shop to a karate studio. Someone doesn't think it needs much of any work and we don't hear about it till later. We do have a change in use process where sometimes it's so benign, like the middle of a strip mall, you got 300 parking spaces. They go from a barber shop to a karate studio. We write a letter to say we acknowledge the change in use, but it doesn't rise to the level of requiring a formal application. We do have changes in uses where we say that's going to a more intense use. We want to evaluate if the property is suitable for that more intensive use. A lot of the question comes down to parking and access aisles and parking to make sure a property has enough parking spaces and that it's safe to get in and out of those parking spaces.
But in this zone, this use is allowed.
Yeah, it's a by right use.
So the only thing we have is the variance for the landscape buffer, the curb, that seems to be the bulk of them, and the number of loading spaces.
Yep.
And the reason I bring that up is because it's not a use variance. If it was a use variance, you would be recording that in a land evidence record, and the next person that buys the property does a title search, they would realize that there was a use variance for this particular use, but that's not going to happen now.
That's
The
correct.
Variances we have are all this, so there's nothing to even trigger, as what Member De Silva was saying. Someone buys the property and just assumes, because there's a 900 and something square foot building there, and it looks perfectly suitable for what they want to do. They're just going to buy it and then find out after the fact.
Yeah.
And
It is true that oftentimes where this gets caught up is someone has a building permit. They think it's a small innocuous building permit, and then they hear from the town to say, before we start working on your building permit, we need to work on your change of use.
Okay. Anyone have any other questions? Anyone on the board?
I would just add, I do have some level of comfortability with the fact that this use is less intense than probably any other use that would exist in that building. They don't have very many parking spaces. There's going to be no plumbing in it. So likely anything that does go in there will require some sort of build out. So that makes me feel a little more comfortable with the fact that it will probably get caught if there ever is a change in use in there in the future. I do have one question though. I guess I don't quite have a good idea of how the site will be used, both inside and outside. Like, is there going to be any storage outside? And I guess I'm also trying to understand, maybe I'm trying to understand what is the purpose of the garage door? Does that have to exist at all? Is there going to be large items, art, whatever, moving in and inside and outside of the building?
I've made some pretty large items in my life, so yeah, that's why the garage door is going to be 10 by 10.
Okay.
It's just easier to get stuff in if I have a truck to get in and unload the truck. Because I buy steel. Most of the stuff that I make is made out of steel. So that's the only reason why there's a garage door.
Okay.
Outside, nope, there's not going to be any storage outside. I'm a very meticulous person. The lot will be nice and neat and clean. There won't be anything outside.
Okay.
Maybe a bench.
Got it. Thank
That's
you.
about it. But there will be some plantings that I'm going to do too for the landscape around the property. Some, I think, like 7 big, maybe arborvitaes or something on the edges. There's not like the lot isn't that big, so there's really not much I can do. But I do plan on doing some landscaping over there to add some greenery.
One vote or three separate.
It's the pleasure of the board. I would suggest that you might want to poll the members to get an idea if there are specific concerns about any individual variance in which that might change how members wish to vote on one variance differently than the others.
Okay.
It's always, it could be safest just to like count on 3 votes. It's actually, if you'll note, there's 4 sections of variance. The buffer, let me just get that back in front of me.
Loading spaces.
The
And then
buffer
there's a
loading
couple of
spaces,
curb
and then there's 2 separate types of curb cut relief.
Right.
So the existing curb cut, which isn't moving, is both too close to an abutting curb cut and it's too close to an intersection. What's causing us to review it is the change in use from going from residential to commercial. We feel this is the moment where we want to make sure, are we comfortable with those curb cut arrangements, even though there's no change with the new use? So that's why you're getting curb cut relief when no new curb cut is being created.
Is there any place on that road you could put a curb cut to this property where he wouldn't need a variance? 'Cause-
No.
Right.
And I don't have the site plan in front of me, but I feel pretty comfortable. I think his curb cut is actually as far away from the major intersection as you
It
can
is.
get it.
Yeah.
So we think it's in the best place. It's where it already was.
I just wanted to make that point because the lot would be useless if he didn't have any curb cut and there's no place he can put it
Yeah,
without the variance.
there are some genuine hardships regarding the lot because of its unique small size and its position on the roadway, which it can't change. So I do think that this is a lot we have to be conscious is not ready for any scale of use. It needs a lower intensity use. I think it could be fine to continue as residential. This is an allowed use this gentleman is pursuing, and it does happen to be a lower intensity use, probably even lower intensity than a single family. We probably have less coming and going than a single family dwelling would have based on his intent. I would note one last thing is if there's a desire to put any hours of operation on it, because we don't generally have that, you could offer as a condition of approval. It might be something you want to say is at 9 at night, we'd like to ensure there's not operation of heavy or loud equipment after a certain hour. That's up to you. It came up as a thought, so it's something that you could do as a bit of a I don't know if it would constrain him, but it might give abutters some peace of mind in terms of the operation and when it's going to happen.
Did you have a question?
We were getting ahead of ourselves. I just wanted to bring up the point that it is a public hearing.
Yes, thank you.
I
I,
don't want to skip over that.
yep, I appreciate that because if Doug didn't just mention if there are other concerns from abutters and it went off in my bed. So at this point, is this on as a public? Yes, it is. So it's on the agenda as a public hearing. So could I have a motion to open public hearing, please?
Make a motion to open
I
this.
I have a motion from Mr. Price to open public hearing. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second from Mr. Delude. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak for or against the application for variances for this property at 420 Washington Street? Okay. Mr. Janelle, yeah, just have a seat till we,
Okay, thank you.
okay, and you can come up, just state your name and address for the record, please.
Susan Leahy, 8245 Post Road, North Kingstown. And we have the house right next door to the lot, and they are our address, and it's a rental property, 426 Washington Street.
That-
So
Is that on the left, the one in the corner, or is the one,
look, if you're looking, it's on the right. It's the Burgundy house with a porch.
across?
It's right next door to the lot, going west.
Yep, okay.
And so, no, I came to listen to just noise factors, fire safety, and to find out how things were going. And I'm kind of happy that it's that the burned out place is down, that something new is going in. you know, my main concerns would be noise and fire safety because there was a fire in the old place. But otherwise, I'm, you know, happy to hear what's happening and happy to see progress.
Okay, thank you.
Michael White, 82,
Michael?
Michael White, 8245 Post Road as well. So we own the house, 426, the apartment. Again, concerned with the noise. I don't know if the fact was brought up, and it's kind of hard, and nothing against you. I love art. It's great. People need a place to build it. If it's a hot rod shop, that's gonna be a pretty loud,
A what?
a hot rod shop. So we did a deep dive into the art that he does make. I don't know if it's mentioned that he works on cars. The sound, I mean, I love the fact that you
No.
build art. It's great. The welding, the grinding, I understand. But if there's gonna be the noise, I guess 7 o'clock would be a good buffer. I'm just concerned with the hot rod coming out and even during the day. But it's gonna be art, which is great. Something does need to be done with the lot, obviously. It was an eyesore. The house came down, it burnt, which is great. Thank you for making sure that went through. Yeah, I guess fire and noise is an issue or a concern.
Okay,
But other than that, I'm glad it's gonna be used and I'm glad to see its art going in. And then further down the road, if it changes over to something like you were saying before, a building that or a business that's gonna expand to that variance, I would want to guarantee that that's not going to go through until it's looked at.
well, there's no
before.
guarantee it's not going to go through, but the person would have to come and apply for variances, just like this gentleman did. Because
Right,
it's a
but that's
change in
after the
use.
fact, once it's sold, correct?
Well, yeah, but the town can take steps to, if they don't have the appropriate permits, the town can take some type of enforcement action. Trying to lose my train of thought here. I was gonna ask if, do we already have an ordinance on noise from 7 to 7?
We have a noise ordinance, and noise ordinance is not in zoning. It's general town code. There are standards that every single person would need to adhere to. So this use, like any use, would need to adhere to it. If they're in violation, then what happens is a complainant would call the police. The police would come out. They actually have a
Right.
decimal reader. And that's how that would move forward. So I can understand that the board has the ability to consider if their hours of operation is appropriate here. That's essentially constraining hours, but it's constraining noise.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, I mean, noise ordinance and noise issues are generally handled outside of zoning by and large. And I would just note, if there was any work on vehicles being done, then that's a different use. That's no longer an art studio, that's vehicle repair, that's a use that wouldn't be
Right,
allowed. So
right.
I know there's concerns about how this use could grow. Once the use grows beyond an art studio, that triggers the change in use review process.
Right, and they would then call the zoning officer in town and they would start taking action, right?
Yeah.
It's the way to go.
Yeah.
That's the enforcement mechanism. But I want to point out, this is not a residential zone.
No.
I know you have a residence,
Right.
so there are a lot of allowed uses in that zone by right.
Mhm.
That's
Right.
one of the things. He's not here
Yeah,
because
and
he's
I'm
put,
not saying.
yeah,
I
he's
don't
not,
see
just so you'll make it
progress.
clear, he's not here because he's putting an art studio in. He's here because the lot is so small, he can't put in the normal required landscape buffer
Right.
for that, that particular development, regardless of what it is. And also, we have a requirement for loading spaces based on the size of the building in the village district. And he's looking for relief because he doesn't plan on having anybody come by where he has to load stuff in and out of vehicles. He's just got his own car. So
Right.
those are really the variances. I just want to point that out.
Right.
The use is an allowed use
Yeah.
as it is right now.
Right. So I know ours used to be a country store way back when.
What's that?
Ours used to be a country
Oh,
store.
yeah. The
Country-
village, yeah, and you know it's across the street, right? We got the funeral, we got the bar, the flower shop, everything's over there.
Right.
And multifamilies and
Yeah,
yours as well.
right. So, all right,
Yep.
Engineering.
sounds good.
Okay.
All right,
Thanks.
I appreciate it.
And I should just note, I'm sorry, for the record, the way I think we would consider is there's 5 counts of relief. There's this concept that an engineering report is owed an association when a curb cut doesn't meet by right. So we would consider that another count of relief. Zoning code suggests that a traffic report should be given if you can't meet the curb cut. They're both not meeting the curb cut and they're not providing a traffic report. We don't have concerns, but it's 5 counts of relief when you add them all up.
Okay. Nope, hold on. Got one more.
Cheryl Kane, 185 Reed Schoolhouse Road. I only have one statement. My concern is just when it comes to his business, there is a way that you can notice it, maybe in the tax assessor's office. So when the property's transferred, the person that is transferring the property will read the deeds. And if there's a notice about this property, they will pick up on it and they can put it right on the actual plat and lot. So this way, when something in that office is changing, you can always contact the building inspector. But the reason why thing is at 225 Hopkins Hill Road, there is a business there. And when you were saying about building permits will activate things going on, you'll know that it'll be a different kind of use. Well, when this gentleman bought this property at 225 Hopkins Hill Road, prior to it, it was owned by Sandberg. I guess it was they used to have like a little house there. It was blasting.
Can't talk about a project that's not before you.
Okay, well, this is pertaining to this. What happened is when they sold the property for over $1 million and they did take out all the permits, no one ever noticed it. So this R20, this business is an R20. It is a trucking company.
This is the
This
VRC.
village residential, but what
I
I'm,
don't want to get into the
Okay.
R20 thing. And that's
Okay.
the other thing. This is not a business. This is his hobby shop.
well, I think that was supposed to be like a hobby at one time too, but it got grow. I'm just saying how it's supposed to recognize. It won't pick up on a building permit because it never did. These people have been fighting since 2016 about this trucking company that's at 225. So that's my thing is only about picking up the use from a building permit. That didn't happen for 225 Hopkins Hill.
No, I
Okay.
agree. Land evidence is the best way, but if there's no mechanism to put it in there, because they got rid of special use permits.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just got a note for the record. There is no relief for use before this board.
Right,
This is strictly
Right.
dimensional relief.
right. That was the point I was trying to make when this gentleman was up. This is an allowed use in this zone.
And just as a clarification, the change in use process was something we initiated within the last 2.5 years. So it makes sense that something 2.5 years ago might have gone through with the building permit and not needed to come to planning. We've initiated that so that there's clarity in the future. Anytime someone changes a use, they know that they have a planning application first.
Okay. Anyone else in the audience want to speak for or against this application or have a comment? Anyone on Zoom? Have their hand up? If you're on Zoom and you have a comment for this application, would you please raise your hand? I don't see anybody. Okay, with that, if there's no other comments, I'll close public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close public hearing.
We have a motion by Mr. Price to close public hearing. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Member De Silva. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Mr. Janelle, just to maybe clarify, come on up to the microphone if you wouldn't mind. First of all, do you plan on working on do you use automobiles in any part of your art at all that you would have?
I've been in automotive business my whole entire life.
Just make sure you got the mic.
So I've been in the automotive business my whole entire life. So I don't plan on doing anything over there. Again, it's a small garage. I am burned out from working on cars after this part of my life. So, and I have been doing a lot of artwork my whole life. So I'm strictly really just doing art out of that place. I may park a car in there. Like if me and my wife buy a convertible, it might be a place for me to put it because it's a convertible and I don't have a place to leave it at the condo. But that would be the only thing that I would do there. I'm not working on cars there.
Yep. Nope. I just wanted to ask the question because the planning director mentioned that is not an allowable use in the zone and the neighbors had a concern.
And I wanted to clarify it too after that gentleman mentioned that, just that I am not planning on working on cars over there.
And then, do you have any issue with the hours of operation or is it, nah, sometimes I'm going to be in there at 10 o'clock at night. I just assume not. And again, we're only talking about it's not that you can't go in the building or use the building.
Yeah, it's
You
keep
just
it
can't,
quiet.
yeah, you can't have any loud activity.
I have no problem with that
Oh.
after 7 o'clock. I'll be conscious of that and keep
Okay.
it quiet after 7.
Okay.
And I don't always make a lot of noise. I mean, yeah, there is some banging involved sometimes when I'm shaping metal, but it's not, the building's going to be insulated and all, so it will be somewhat soundproof, so it shouldn't be that loud. It's not like I'm not going to be hammering that much.
Yep. I just wanted you to address it because it was a concern that was brought up.
Yes.
So now the whole board kind of can weigh,
Yeah, I understand.
In the,
I just wanted to clarify it so you had an understanding as well, what
yep.
I
Yeah,
do.
and it is, the reason it's relevant is because it's a small lot, so you're very close to the neighbors, and that's what you're here for, is a dimensional variance. So again, they're concerned with, well, geez, if it's that close to us, we want to make sure it's not going to be disturbing our tenants, because then they're going to get phone calls, and then,
I understand. I wouldn't like
no
it, so I won't want to do that to them.
fair enough. Okay, anybody else on the board have any questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none. Anyone want to make, I guess your suggestion was, does anyone, so we've got 5 items on here. So we've got the landscape buffer. Maybe I should start by polling the members to say, do you have any concerns with any of the variances that are before us, such that we can't take them as a package? Because we could take them as a package if nobody objects.
Correct.
Okay. So Gabby, I'm sorry? Okay, so you have concern, but whether we take them as a package or not as a package, it doesn't matter. Okay. Gabby, do you have?
I have no concerns. When I examined, and I also went on GIS to examine the area, I'm perfectly fine with all the things that
Well,
I saw.
the question is, you may have an issue with the distance, but not have an issue with the
No,
curb
I
cut.
have no
And then
issues that-
then what we would do is we would vote on each variance separately,
Understood.
which
I have no
takes a little
issue
bit of time.
whatsoever.
Mr. Burke?
No concerns.
Okay. Mr. Delude, do you have any concerns voting them as a package? In other words, okay,
I'm good with one vote.
okay. And
Yeah, 1 vote.
okay, all right. So at this time, I will then entertain a motion if someone chooses to make one so that we can move on this item. Want to take a stab at it, anybody?
I will.
Okay, thank you.
So I move that the planning commission approve the dimensional variances associated with the project known as Janelle Art Studio located at 420 Washington Street, AP 56, Lot 77, zoned VMC. Those dimensional variances being variance from the minimum landscape buffer requirement, minimum number of required loading spaces for commercial building, and the minimum distance between the curb cut and the intersection, and then the minimum distance between the subject curb cut and the closest abutting curb cut. And then finally, relief from providing the engineering report to accompany the above curb cut request. In support of this motion, I move that the Planning Commission adopt the findings of fact as presented in the 5/21/26 staff report. And this approval is subject to the conditions as outlined in that same staff report. And I incorporate the staff report into my motion.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Delude. Okay, any further discussion? Concerns? None. Okay. I'll do a roll call vote then. Mr. Delude? For or against granting the variances?
I am not against.
For.
I'm for it.
Okay. Mr. Price?
Or
Mr. Studley?
For.
Got it.
For.
Mr. De Silva?
No.
Mr. Burke?
Yes.
I'll vote for. So motion carries 6-1. We're all set.
Right, thank you.
And you do have one more vote on this matter.
I'm sorry.
You actually have a vote on the minor land development, which is basically the by right use triggers a vote by the Planning Commission.
A by right use, you still have to have a vote by the
Yeah,
planning commission?
commercial development is considered a minor land development at the square footage. And this is actually in front of you because it triggered unified development. So the minor land development developing commercial and the variances combined for this to come in front of you. So you vote on the variances and then
Okay.
because of that, you also vote on the minor land development.
Okay. So, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minor land development associated with this application.
I move that Planning Commission approve the preliminary plan application for the Janelle Art Studio project located at 420 Washington Street, Assessor's Plat 56, Lot 77, Zone VMC. In support of this motion, I move that the commission adopt the findings of fact as presented in the 5/21/26 staff report. And I also incorporate the conditions of approval as outlined in that staff report.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second by Mr. Lewis. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll do the same roll call vote, same order.
I approve.
Did I go in this order before? It doesn't matter. Okay. I gotta get that. That's okay.
No.
Mr. Burke? Mr. Delude?
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, same vote, 6-1. All set.
Okay,
Got what you need.
You are approved.
thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Doug.
All right. Next item on the agenda, number 7, subdivision and land development regulations for discussion, vote, or other action. Public comment taken on Coventry subdivision and land development regulations, consideration and vote on the proposed amendments to modify the allowable forms of financial security. In addition, this update will offer minor revisions to other sections of the subdivision and land development regulations that reference the terms of performance bonds or other guarantees. So I believe that is. Yeah, so this is listed as 7.1 and then 8 has all the ordinances. Is there a separate?
Yeah, this is the matter of your subdivision regulation amendment. For this particular document, the Planning Commission is the sole authority on voting to amend the subdivision regulations.
Yep, okay, here. it is.
The other zoning stuff, it's all recommendations to the council. But this is obviously a big topic It's related to many items on your agenda, including the zoning recommendations. Obviously, we're happy to answer any questions the board may have, but the very quick summary is that we're moving to a more uniform and rigid format of the types of financial security we wish to accept. There's a core new ordinance that's being proposed. It would be Chapter 123, and that is an ordinance that actually establishes what does the term financial security mean, what are the allowable forms of it. All the other code that's being adjusted is pointing towards that new source code. And I think the only wrinkle to consider here is because we're voting on our subdivision regulations tonight, and because this is counting on code that isn't yet adopted, we advise that there's a sunrise clause with this. So as you vote to approve it, you're voting with the condition that it will become enforced or it will become codified once the town council acts on the their own code of section 123.
Aren't we putting the cart before the horse? Shouldn't that go first with the ordinances and then we vote on this?
We have some options. We could certainly continue this. I think that it's fine to vote on this in anticipation of the other code being adopted. If speed is of concern, and we vote on this tonight, it becomes more quickly enforceable and adopted. So if the idea is we want to ensure this new financial security code is going in as soon as possible, that we have the right to vote tonight. The commission also does have the ability to continue this to next month if you want to wait and see the outcome of the council before this. This came as a bit of a directive that we should remove these tools. Particularly, there's a concern with letters of credit that don't meet the standards of financial security. There was concern to do this quickly. So that's why we're preparing it for you and putting you in a position to act on it quickly.
Quite candidly, I'm a little confused because I have all of these ordinances here, 2026, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. 6. And those are the same, I think those are the first 6 that are listed under item 8. Right?
That
Then
look
we've got
correct.
this separate one.
Is the one you're looking at now that you just raised?
Staff analysis of proposed amendments to the subdivision and land
Yep.
development regulations.
That's the matter we're on right now.
So in summary, what does this do in relation to all of these where you've changed the finance?
So the mechanism to change our code changes depending on what the code is. So for subdivision and land development regulations, the planning commission is the authority to vote and adopt those changes. So for this matter, 7, you're the authority to vote. On the other matters, 8 and
making
on,
recommendations.
you're making recommendations to the council.
Right.
So it's, and this subdivision change regulation calls actually a public hearing, whereas the recommendations to the councils don't. So it's separate decisions. It's connected, but this decision needs to be handled as separate than the others.
So Doug, I did have some questions on this one, right? Because based off of what state law is and then what we're allowed to do. For instance, in here, it talks about a 1-year period,
Mhm.
right? It talks about when we release bonds and stuff like that. I'm just not happy with the way we have the process now. And I don't know if this is written based off of what state law is telling us or how much we can modify it. I actually don't agree with releasing bonds before a project's completely done. The other issue I have is this talks about a 1-year period. Can we extend that past 1 year to 2 years once it's complete? Because what's been happening is in town, we have had developers that have completed projects, turned it over to the HOA, right? Walked away, and then we have problems, right? And then the HOA left to deal with it, and the town is left to deal with it. And we already released the bond, and the developer's gone. Can we legally turn around and say, all right, a year after or 2 years after the HOA has taken over, then we will release the bond? Can we say, no, we won't release bonds in phases, and we'll just hold the bond until the entire project is completed? I think those are things that I want to know whether or not we can, and then we can have discussion where we want this to go, right? Because we are getting, the town is getting beat up right now, and we've seen it in a number of instances in town where problems happen a year or two after, right? I mean, we can't hold them forever, but something reasonable needs to happen, because all too often, especially with water these days, right? We've had a lot of flooding in some areas where developments come up, and then down the hill, a flood happened. And then what happens? Now the town has to deal with that situation because the developers walked away from it. What are our right and left limits? I know on some of the bond things, like I'm not a big fan of lines of credit. Not a big fan of it at all, because we've seen what's happened, right? Regardless of how it's designed. But I understand from our attorney that state law dictates that that has to be a form that is allowed, right? So our hands are tied in that aspect, and we have to include that, right? But I think I want to know, what are the things we don't have to, that we have some leeway, that we can tighten it up. And again, I want developers to come to town, but I don't want the town and people to have to deal with these situations without any recourse down the road. We've got a lot of developments in this town coming, a lot of developments. And I just want to know what our left and right limits are.
I can, well, it's a, do you want to hop in first, David?
Points. So this needs to be separated in two pieces. The reason why you have a number of ordinances and include your subdivision as an ordinance for the lack of, just for the lack of it, just for clarity, that the definition of what is allowable and what is not allowable as a bond or financial security was defined in 12 different ways, in 12 different places. That's not the exact number. What are there, 8 ordinances? How many ordinances are here? How
Yeah,
many are right here, just quickly?
I mean, I think we got.
I'm throwing the number.
There's 9, but
Yes.
2 of them, one's gas stations and one's the kennels.
Okay. So for the sake of this moment, that definition and the location of the definition of bond was in 6 different places, and then 7, including your subdivision, in 7 different definitions. They were defined differently throughout the code. There was no consistency. But what really prompted it was that there was a letter of credit that was not irrevocable, and it caused the town some issues. So the question that the council thrust upon us was, we want to get rid of letters of credit. That was my first charge. Well, state law says you got to have any financial security, you got to have a minimum of 3 items. So if you notice, we put down cash, surety, or actually an irrevocable trust is the third choice. But there's some law that there are some aspects of financial security that when letters of credit must be allowed. So we do allow letter of credit as a 4th potential option, subject to 2 conditions. 1, that it be irrevocable, and 2, that it be approved. Now, in your code here, it says approved by the solicitor, but the council wants it to be approved by them. So that's going to be an amendment to the ordinances as we move forward. We haven't had the public hearing on the ordinances. When these got submitted to the council, they want to approve it. So that we tried to make it a one particular ordinance, the new ordinance, section 123, and have everywhere else that town describes financial security, point to that one ordinance. Say, you want financial security, go to 123. That's where the law is on one, not in section 12 and 13 and 14 and 15 and the subdivision regular. You got to go to 123. So That's the only place that it's defined now, assuming this were to get passed. And it's defined as strictly as we're allowed to under state law. That's really what we're doing. We're creating 123 that strictly define financial security to 3 items: bond, cash, irrevocable trust. And in those instances, when somebody wants a letter of credit, it's going to be irrevocable and approved by the council, otherwise they can't get it. That's the best we can do under state law. That's the tightest we can be. And that's but that's that one issue. The other issue about the time, state law says you can only hold a bond for 1 year. There's a bill up at the General Assembly right now to make it 2 that was put in at our request. And it's working its way. So first of all, that's not part of this. That's not before you. What's before you is really 2 things. Do you want to change your subdivision regulations to point to 123? That's our request. You don't have to do it. You can say no, then define it the way you want it. But we're recommending that you define it as tightly as you can under state law, and we provided that definition for you.
And that, okay, so that takes care of this. And then assume
Then,
that,
then,
But wait a minute, but then again, what is before us is the subdivision regulation.
That's
And
what
in
you
it,
said.
there is a time frame which says 1 year
that's what this.
on there, right?
Yeah,
And
but it's
so
the only-
what you're telling me
the
though
only
is
change in the
we cannot
subdivision-
change that.
No, Commissioner, the only change we're recommending in the subdivision regulations is the definition of security. So if that hasn't been made clear, that's the only change we're asking you to make. We're not asking you to touch that. It should be underlined. Is it underlined in that?
Yeah,
Okay.
but I think that what I understand to be the commissioner's question is that he wants a little context on the other ramifications and issues related to bonding to help put this change into context.
Well,
And I think what I can offer is hearing what you suggested. There are some other issues where we have wiggle room and differences between what state law might allow and what we do now. Without wanting to sidetrack it, I can just tell you in a future meeting, staff can do a little research and provide an overview. State law does not mandate that we have to release a singular bond in partial amounts. We're allowed to wait until the project is complete, and then we can reduce it to 20% and then go through the 1-year maintenance period. We do allow applicants to seek partial reductions along the way, which our code allows, but state law does not mandate. That's an issue I think we could put some further study in and maybe have as a discussion item at a future meeting. Along with the concept of phasing, is an applicant allowed to phase a project, or are we allowed to restrict separate bonds on separate phases? I don't know. That's going to need a little research. The degree to which we could withhold an applicant from creating separate bonds for separate phases to essentially accomplish the same thing, partial reductions along the way. That would require a little research. Happy to do that. And then I think we can facilitate that as a separate discussion. But I think what David suggested is what's in front of you tonight is sort of limited to what's the tool we would accept for it and under any occasion.
Understand, but I think that is part of the problem I have. So right here on these are the ordinances that the town council does. That's their purview, period. We're just going to make a recommendation to them on what they have put before us and decided. My issue is we're going to vote on something on a minor change that we probably should have had a discussion on, that there are other things we may want to have changed. I think that's my only concern. If we're going to change one word, maybe we should have had a discussion on this at some point between all of us and decided if there's additional things we wanted to change. Understanding now that there was only one thing we can change because that is the only thing on the agenda right now. Got it. But I would make the recommendation at some point that we relook at all of these as the commission and say, is this where we want to go and where we want to be? So that's my only point.
No, that's fair. I would note this. You might have noted, and we've never taken it up because we've had long, busy meetings, and at the end of the meetings, we're generally ready to go home. We have carried as a director's report discussion item subdivisions land development regulations. So we've done that because there's been occasional times we've given you updates on things that we were working on. I don't mind if the commission uses that agenda item to suggest questions they may have in areas where they may wish to see further research and discussion. It's a discussion item. There's no issue with offering a very limited discussion to say, I'd like to understand this further. Can we have that prepared for a future meeting? So keep in mind, because we have been active in looking at our subregs, there's a few other things that are coming. I don't mind using that and keeping that on our agendas for the meantime to facilitate Q&A on things that we haven't brought to you, but you may wish to hear more about.
I would appreciate that.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, so would I, and we'll track that legislation, and then depending on the outcome of that, then maybe we could look at everything as a whole. Because if it passed, that's one thing we wanted to address. So, so noted. So if I understand correctly now, all of these recommendations that are before us with regard to finance, not the two use ones, the gas stations and the kennels, all have to do with this financial security thing that was brought up. So that
They all have to do, they basically strike the definitions of financial security as previously defined and say the financial security is a term now, and in order to understand what that term, go to 123. That's what the council is going to, assuming the council passes these ordinances, any ordinance that has the term financial security is now defined in 123 to be as defined. So that's your recommendation to the council. As far as the subdivision regulations, perhaps maybe the subdivision regulations can be reviewed by the board and they can make all kinds of changes, whatever they think they should make. But the only purpose was to bring your subdivision regulations along with the other ordinances, to match them along with clarity as to the definition of financial security. But Commissioner De Silva raises a greater issue that is not before you today, but certainly merits discussion.
So could the ordinances, and I'm talking about 8.1 to 8.6, which have to do with, wind energy, solar, they all have to do with landscape buffers. All these things have to do with the financial security. Those recommendations could be voted on. The council can act, they could pass those ordinances without 7.1 passing. Is that a flaw? In other words, 7.1 is the matter that's before us, the one that we were just talking about. 7.1 is the vote.
That's your
subdivision.
subdivision regulation.
If we don't change this, do these ordinances now,
They still change.
they still
They
change?
still change, and your subdivision regulations won't point to that. But at some point, the council would take some sort of other action.
Yeah, they'd be in conflict of each other.
Right. I mean, I don't
Okay.
think that's a good idea. I don't
Right.
think you should create that conflict with the council, because
Right.
really, when we get into financial security, I'm not so sure, I don't want to get into a long discussion on this, but I'm not so sure that should have creeped into your subdivision regulations.
Yeah,
But it's there. So
the-
Remember, we raised this last time
Right.
with the last one because of that issue that took
Yep.
place. So
Yep.
this is just closing that up. And now the council is doing their ordinances. This is going to put us in line on just that piece with the financial obligations.
And I just wanted to make it clear that really, to close the loop, you got to act on that. If the council's going to vote on these and they pass them, not to have that is going to create a problem. That's what I wanted to bring up. And the second thing I wanted to bring up is because this change is down for public hearing, and then we've got public comment on all of these proposed ordinances, and 8.1 through 8.6, which are 2026-11 through 2026-16, all have to do with this financial security issue. So what I was going to suggest is, if there's any way, so I don't have to keep opening and closing public hearing, that's what I want to do. I would like if you could maybe just give us a little bit of a very quick overview.
Specify which
you,
ordinance.
Mr. Chairman, is with regard to 7.1, just so we're clear, that's a specific public hearing function that this board must do to change their subdivision regulations. You should conduct your public hearing on 7.1 and make a decision on 7.1. as far as your recommendations on 8.1 to 8.6, although you accepting public comment, you didn't need to, because that's going to be a full-blown
Okay.
public hearing at the council with 2 votes before the council can do anything. But just the confusion is that you're performing a specific function that you need to perform that's subject to a public hearing that's been advertised and posted. And I would stick with that first. And then I think the block of the regulations will come.
I would.
with
It concerns me sometimes that folks come to the meeting and they see all of these ordinances and they refer to the allowable forms of financial security. And I appreciate the definition and the clarity that we've got up to now. But just to maybe make reference before that the items pertain to the financial security that gets posted for telecommunication antennas and towers, sand and gravel extraction and earth removal, residential cluster developments, landscape buffers and maintenance, wind energy facilities, and solar power generators, which include, particularly with the last 2, the renewable energies, we have them post financial security to cover the removal cost in the event those items are abandoned. So I'm just throwing that out for the record so that folks know that's the pointer, or that's what points to this particular item, 7.1. So 7.1 is the guarantees of
some sense to define what you used to define your financial security and then what we're proposing, so that that's really the whole essence of it. The way it was loose language before, and now it's tight language now. That's really the issue.
Right. Without reading the entire thing, but
7.1 used to,
Yeah, so
definition.
this is now struck out, but it says allowable guarantees shall include cash, performance bonds, letters of credit, and other form of surety as approved by the Planning Commission and the Director of Finance. And I guess I have a question, if I may. So there is no definition now in these subdivision regulations, and I assume that's by design. Everything just points to this new 123, and I assume that's for ease of use because we have these multiple different definitions everywhere, and we're trying to prevent from that happening again in the future. If we ever decide to change the definition again, it's in one place, and all the other ordinances just point to that. Got it.
and the 4 forms of financial security are the ones that you read off a few minutes ago. Okay.
It says you shall provide 3 forms of security. So the 3 forms that we're going to definitely allow is cash,
Yep.
a surety
Surety.
bond, and an irrevocable trust. We picked that one because we really don't want a letter of credit because that caused problems. But there's some law that suggests that you need to have a letter of credit, but you can have it under very limited circumstances. And the limited circumstances are 1, that it be irrevocable, and 2, that it be approved. Right now, it says by the solicitor, but we're going to say by the council.
Okay.
That's what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to make it so tight that
Yep.
you got 3 forms that is essentially cash on the barrelhead,
Yep.
surety that equals cash on the barrelhead, an irrevocable trust that equals cash on the barrelhead, or in that unusual circumstance where the council says yes, it's an irrevocable letter of trust that's equal to
Perfect.
cash on the barrelhead.
Yep.
Because we've had situations where we don't have cash on the barrelhead. And I'm sorry to use that vernacular, but that's what
Got
we're
it.
talking about. We want cash or the equivalent.
Yep.
That's what we want.
Okay. So this is down for public hearing. So before I take a motion to open public hearing, does anyone else on the commission have a question about this? Yes.
I have one more question. So this item and then other items that will follow are all pointing towards this section 123 that is to be created
No, it's created.
or is created, but is on the docket for approval by the town council. Is that something that we would provide a recommendation on, or is it because it's outside of the zoning ordinance that it's strictly within their court?
In their court, and if you were to move forward after public hearing and move forward with your subdivision, you would make it contingent upon section 123 being approved.
Ah, got it.
That will cut, that will, the timing of this is, it is what it is. I think the planning department was trying to be expeditious in not just bringing the ordinances in front of you and leaving your subdivisions hanging out there and then say, well, why aren't we fixing that? So we tried to fix it, and now we're being asked, why are you trying to fix it before you fix the ordinance? It's a chicken or the egg scenario.
So
It
any-
needs to be
okay.
done simultaneously in lockstep if that's what you're trying to accomplish, to have a unified definition.
Okay, so any motion to approve this particular amendment to the subdivision land regulation has to be subject to the council passage of the new section 123. And the rest of the items are just recommendations to the council anyway. Those aren't actually votes for or against. Studley.
Right. Section 123 is not a zoning, so you don't make a recommendation.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this matter? You'll get another shot before, but I just want to move to, I'll entertain a motion to open public hearing. We have a motion to open public hearing by Member Price. Do I have a second?
Second.
And I have a second by Member De Silva. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Anyone in the public that is here tonight wish to speak for or against the amendments to the subdivision and land development regulations that we just talked about at length? And I don't see any. Is there anybody on Zoom that would like to speak on this matter, amendments to the subdivision and land development regulations that we just entertained somewhat of a lengthy discussion? And I don't see any. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to close public hearing. We have a motion to close public hearing by Member Price. Could I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Member Burke. All in favor of closing public hearing? Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay, so I think we've had a fairly lengthy discussion. If anyone has any other questions, we can do them now, or someone can make a motion and we'll bring it up under discussion. I'd like to move this. If
I'll make a
someone-
motion, Mr. Chairman. For agenda item 7.1, I make a motion that we adopt the proposed amendments to the Coventry subdivision and land development regulations with one condition. These proposed amendments to the subdivision and land development regulations will take effect upon the town council approval of ordinance 2026-07, which is the Town of Coventry Code of Ordinances, Part 2, General Legislation, Chapter 123, titled Financial Security. And I will also include the planning director's 4-page memorandum in my motion to adopt.
Thank you for that. Do I have a second?
Second.
And I have a second by Member De Silva. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay, so that's all set. Okay, so now what I would like to do, we just talked about the changes to the types of financial security and making them all uniform. So there are actually 6 ordinances where we're proposing to make them all uniform. And I did just read them off a second ago, but just for the record, we have ordinance 2026-11, amending 255-970, which is a supplementary regulations for telecommunications towers. The proposed amendment will modify the allowable forms of financial security for the removal of abandoned telecommunication antennas and towers. Ordinance 2026-12, 255-1020, and 255-1060, earth removal, sand and gravel extraction, permit application and security, performance bond. This proposed code amendment will modify the allowable forms of financial security for earth removal and sand and gravel extraction. Then we have ordinance 2026-13, amending 255-1340 and 255-1380 and 255 is that a typo? I think it's 1310, unless it's 13100. Residential cluster development, general requirements, approval required before improvements and security performance bond. The proposed zoning code amendment will modify the allowable forms of financial security for residential cluster developments. And then we have ordinance 2026-14, amending 255-1760, landscaping and maintenance of landscape buffers. This zoning code amendment will modify the allowable forms of financial security for implementation of landscape plans. And then ordinance 2026-15, amending 255-2080 and 255-20120, special regulations for wind energy facilities, decommissioning and abandonment and improvement guarantees. And this proposed zoning ordinance will modify the allowable forms of financial security for the dismantlement or removal of wind energy facilities. And then lastly, ordinance 2026-16, amending 255-2140, special regulations, solar power generators, ground-mounted solar installations. This proposed zoning code amendment will modify the allowable forms of financial security for removal of solar power generators and restoration. And the matter before this planning commission is to make a recommendation, favorable, unfavorable, or no recommendation to the town council, who will have the ultimate authority to adopt these ordinances and will also conduct, I believe, their own public hearing. So that being said, it's not a public hearing, it's down for public comment. So is anyone in the audience wish to speak on the ordinance that I just rattled off, where we talk about amending the allowable forms of financial security? And I don't see any. Do we have anybody on Zoom that would like to comment on the proposed ordinances that I just read concerning the forms of financial security that could be offered for any of those items that I just talked about? And I don't see any. So that being said, anyone on the commission have any questions, concerns, or comments about the proposed changes in the methods of financial security? And if not, I would entertain a motion if someone pleases to make a recommendation one way or the other to the town council. And of course, we always have the option to make no recommendation, but
I'll make a motion to make positive recommendation to the town council.
and that would be for all items 8.1, 8.2, 8.3.
8.4, 8.5, and 8.6.
Thank you. So I have,
Involve financial security.
and do I have a second? I have a second by Member Price. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of a favorable recommendation on those 6 ordinances to the
And then-
town council?
May I just ask, as you make that, just make reference to the findings in the staff report that were provided?
Include staff report and findings
Thank you.
from the planning
So,
department.
okay, so you're amending your motion to include the planning director's
Include plan
staff
director,
report
staff
and the
report
finding,
Finding.
and whoever made the second, you're gonna, and we got the second from Mr. Price. So, okay, so hearing no other discussion, all in favor of a favorable recommendation to the town council,
Aye.
signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, so that's all set. So that's good. The next item is again, public comment, ordinance 2026-17, amending 255-200 definitions, standard interpretations of 255-9110, supplemental regulations, kennels, and 255-600 zoning district use and dimensional regulations, schedule of zoning district use regulations. This proposed zoning code amendment will allow the use of dog kennels in all zones except for VRC, VMC, Industrial 2, and establish new supplementary regulations for kennels and outdoor enclosures. Before we start, I just want to point out the item on the agenda can be somewhat misleading. So I hope you all had an opportunity to review the proposed changes. For example, I had a few folks in my area. I live up in the Black Rock area, and we're in the R20 zone. They weren't aware, not reading the ordinance, that in the R20 zone, for example, you'll need 2 acres of land to get a kennel license. So just throwing that out there. So there's a number of dimensional regulations, new distances from residential properties, even if it's in the commercial zone, that are contained in the ordinance. Does anyone on the commission have any questions or comments regarding this proposed ordinance or concerns?
Again, Doug, this is, again, before the council, and it's their ordinance, it's their vote.
Correct.
But just for clarification, the acreages required for a dog kennel are 3 acres in the RR2 and 2 acres in the R20? Is there any scenario where it's less than 2 acres?
Yes. The kennel, you'll note in
Commercial.
the sections of the ordinance, particularly lines 45 through 50 of the proposed ordinance, it does dictate the minimum lot size. So essentially for the R5, the R3, it's what the minimum lot size of a standard lot is. Essentially what we're saying is if you want to have a kennel, you can't have a substandard lot in the R5, R3. In the R2, we're suggesting you should have 3 acres, which is more than the minimum amount of that. In the R20, we're suggesting you should have 2 acres. In the GB zone, shooting from the hip, but I believe 1,500 is our minimum lot size in the GB.
15,000.
Yeah, 15,000. And then in the I zone, 60,000 is the minimum lot size of the I. So essentially, the way to think about it is that the code is being written such that if you want to have a kennel, you should meet the minimum lot size of your zoning district. However, if you're in an R2 or an R20, you need to have more acreage than the minimum size. You need to meet these specific standards.
And then in all zones, all residential zones, they can't be located within 300 feet from any other residential property. And that's measured from the fence or the kennel facility on the site. It's not like the building's over here. If there's a fenced area, it's from the fence.
Yeah, it's from the area that would be designated as the kennel on the subject property to the property
Oh.
line that has a residential. So
Okay, it's kennel structures or outdoor enclosures that are sited in residential shall be not located within 300 feet from any other residential property. And then kennel structures or outdoor enclosures that are sited in commercial or industrial, it's got to be at least 100 feet from any other residential property. And that's the property line of the residential property.
correct. Yeah, we were thoughtful that we're not interested in regulating kennels from the other nearest structure. We're regulating it from the property lines. The idea is that someone might have a big backyard, they want to have peace and quiet, or they want to have some semblance of separation distance from their backyard. We're measuring it from property lines, not from the nearest house. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And just so I'm clear on it, it used to say like the RR5, RR3, kennels or boarding of animals, there was an N. For
Yeah,
no. Was that because there was at that time a requirement for a special use permit?
exactly.
So it wasn't that it wasn't allowed, it just required a special use permit. Now what you're saying, it is permitted because we're not using special use permits any longer.
Yeah, the quick version is that longstanding members will recall in January of 2024, we made a lot of changes to code. That was when a big change of state law came. One of the changes in state law was they made special use permit code at the state level much more permissive. It was easier to achieve a special use permit. And Coventry's response was, right now, all land uses that relied on a special use permit, we're going to turn it into a not allowed while we consider what uses we're going to bring back and in what format. And so this is a land use that we always thought needed additional regulation. We weren't going to bring back kennels as just a by right use without additional layers of regulation. So this is that moment. The impetus is that we've had a lot of outside parties suggesting we'd like to pursue this use. It was always the town's intent to allow this use. This is bringing it back with those additional layers of regulation. The zones that you see it in, the residential zones, historically, this was allowed in residential zones in town. So, but yeah, while I agree with the first statement, which is this is the domain of the council, it's often that the planning commission could advise if you see something specifically about this code that stands out, you could communicate that. However, in general, it's really the council has the domain to amend this code in any way, shape, or form that they see fit. And it's certainly coming across as new code. All of this is code that didn't exist before. We're adding regulation to a use that we're bringing back from not allowed.
Did you draw some of these things from somewhere? I mean, enclosures have to be placed in the rear yard, not in front of side yards. Stockade fence 6 feet in height required along the perimeter of the kennel outdoor enclosure at the discretion of the administrative officer and or planning commission. Kennel structures enclosures must have on-site waste facilities. And then the hours of operation for the structures and outdoor enclosures, 7 a.m. to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Not construed to prohibit individual dogs from being able to go outside for brief periods of time. Did that come from?
Yeah, staff drafted this. We had a lot of overlap with the animal control officer who's actually in attendance tonight. Carol, animal control officer Lacombe is here. She helped us draft this. She's works with a variety of different organizations or residents that are involved in these types of uses. There's a degree which some of this was new to her. She wasn't used to the concepts of, how we would deal with zoning. So we had a concerted effort to try to bring this forward with people that deal with this on a hands-on level, thinking about standards that in zoning we typically would rely upon. If the idea is this is a nuisance use because it's noisy, separation distance is the right metric to apply to it. We picked 300 feet. Not going to say that this is highly scientific. We thought that we needed more than 100. 300 feet happens to also be the distance that you would need if you wanted to have a rooster on your property. So if you're going to hold a rooster on your property, which obviously it's a noisy animal, that needs to be 300 feet from a property line. So there was some nexus to some of this that we developed, and we had a lot of conversations to make sure we felt comfortable with this code before it came in front of you. Ultimately, it is the domain of the council, and the council hasn't had a chance to really digest or react to this, and there might be changes at their level as well.
Could I ask one more kind of, I think it's a pertinent question. What constitutes a kennel? I mean, at what point do you need to say, hey, guess what? I've got a kennel. Is it the operation? Is it the number of dogs?
It's the number of dogs.
And
the idea is that actually town code and even state law is written that once you have more than 3 dogs, you're something other than just a house that has dogs. There's an ability with a 4th dog to seek a specific waiver from the animal control officer in certain circumstances to have a 4th dog. Once you have 5 or more, you're off and running. We consider you a kennel. You could say, I'm not running a kennel. I just have 5 dogs. We're going to say, well, we're going to permit you as a kennel. You're going to need to meet the kennel code, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so generally it's 3. There's a waiver for 4. And then once it's over 4, it's definitely a kennel.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Anyone else on the commission have any questions at this time? We can always circle back. Okay. So this is down for public comment. If there's anybody in the audience that wants to speak about this proposed ordinance, I would ask you to come up to the microphone or raise your hand first and I'll call on you. Anybody in the audience? Come on up.
Cheryl Kane, 185 Reed Schoolhouse Road. First of all, I do question why we are questioning this new kennel license or how we're doing things differently. Prior, for many, many years, whenever you had more than 3 dogs, you would approach the dog officer and you would request to have more dogs. If one of your dogs was older, you would get a fourth one because they did figure that one would pass away. In order to get a kennel license, you would apply through the dog, through the animal control. It would be advertised. It would go through the town clerk's office. They would have to fill out all the documentation. Then it would go to town council. Town council is the one that approved the kennel license because town council felt that these kind of kennel license had to be controlled in our town because of the noise, the smells, quality of life and safety. So I don't understand why they're even changing the way they're doing the kennel licenses. I think all licensing should come from the town clerk's office from any kind of business.
Yeah, let me think about that.
Okay.
They still need a license from the clerk's office to get,
Yeah, everything that Mrs. Kane just referenced still has to happen.
right.
The idea is that in addition to licensing, the zoning code needs to allow the land
Yeah,
use.
I think what happened in response, if it's okay,
Mhm, mhm.
is that process was there and is still there.
Okay.
What changed was in 2024, the state of Rhode Island
Mhm.
told the cities and towns, if you've got special use permits that are granted by your planning commission or zoning board,
Yes.
they're basically going to be approved. There's no more subjectivity. They said they're too subjective and they got to go.
Mhm.
So out of an abundance of caution,
Mhm.
we changed them all to N.
Okay.
And since we can't bring back special use permits, what the planning commission is doing is we're trying to look at dimensions and other restrictions to make sure the property is suited for a kennel license. But nothing, if I'm understanding correctly, stops the council from not issuing a kennel license on one of these. It's not going to be a guarantee because they want a kennel license and they meet all these criteria in the zoning that they'll get it, or
You're correct that the license is still a separate decision, separate and apart from a land use approval, and that they'd still need to seek a license from the town council.
so that still holds.
So why are we not just going through the town clerk, through the animal control and town council? We did not, the town of Coventry did not issue special use permits for dog kennels. They just went through and they were issued a license. I don't remember this. Maybe Carolyn Lacombe can speak about the special use
Well,
permits.
I'll
I do not remember any special use
I'll
permits.
defer the zoning
Hmm.
table that was in the code for years had an S in all those zones that we're talking about
Okay,
tonight.
so do you know of any dog kennel that was issued a special use permit?
I have I can hear my animal control officer in the back saying yes.
Okay.
This
cool.
would have all been before my time, so I'm not personally aware.
Okay, I would ask her to mention what dogs, and what kennels had the special use permit. But, may I speak further and then she
Sure,
can answer
sure,
that
sure.
later? Okay. Our concerns about these, kennels in the, zoned, 2 acre plus the additional acre. These locations are basically Reed Schoolhouse Road, Hope Furnace Road. I'm thinking Town Farm. I do have the map right here that it was zoned for, that it was on. I put it on Facebook for the whitey areas where this is located.
The RR2,
Yes. And a lot of these areas right here have been subdivided quite a bit over the years. So now what you're going to do is you're going to put a kennel right smack dab in one of these areas that probably does have a subdivision that's maybe 300 feet away, but all these trees are gone. So what you're going to do is you're just creating a nuisance in all this 2 acre plus 1 additional acre zone. So I really feel that they should be, kennel licenses should only be in 4 to 5 up when it comes to kennel licenses, only because of the noise. Unless, if you're going to put these here, you are allowing 20 dogs. Now, you said, yes, 300 feet away, you can have a rooster, not 20 roosters. You're having 20 puppies, dogs, every 6 months, people coming in and out, buying them, whatever. We also have an issue where all our shelters are full. There's no places to put these animals. And what we're doing is we're now creating kennels all through Coventry because I know they're a moneymaker, but we just produce some puppy mills. are these dogs just going to be eventually sent to these shelters? And a lot of times the shelters, they have to kill the dogs. I mean, it just seems like a circle, just going around the same. I just think that you really do need to control kennel licenses in any area. But what we're really concerned about is the noise impacts. We're concerned about the barking, kennel operations, deliveries, the increased activity. Would it be negatively affect the quiet environment of the surrounding homes, the enjoyment of their homes? The continuous barking from multiple dogs, early morning and late evening disturbances, outdoor exercise areas, amplifying sound, noise carrying across open rural properties. Are you going to have the strict hours for outdoor kennel activity, sound reducing building materials, mandatory acoustic fencing or berms, increased setbacks from neighboring homes, limits on outdoor dog runs? We're concerned about the odor and the waste disposal, accumulation of the animal waste, outdoor migration during the odors during the warm weather, waste, improper disposal methods affecting nearby properties and wells. A lot of us have wells up in these areas in this 2+1 additional. We would like to know about the information about waste collection procedures, frequency of waste removal, storage methods, approved disposal facilities, stormwater and runoff protections, property value impacts. Is it going to be the surrounding residential property values? Are they going to be reduced? Nearby homes more difficult to sell? Change the residential rural character of the neighborhood? Future accessory dwelling units allowability. Whether kennel zoning changes could affect future ADU approvals, whether increased commercial use in the area may alter residential density standards, potential conflicts between residential expansion and commercial kennel activity, with concerns with traffic and road safety, increased daily vehicle trips, customer drop-off and pickups, delivery vehicles, employee traffic, congestion on narrow rural roads. The residents request traffic impact studies, limits on business traffic, parking requirements, restrictions on commercial vehicle activity. We also request location transparency with specific street names and possible locations proposed for kennel use. Maps, well, we already get the maps identified in the zoning areas. We would like to have public notice requirements whenever a kennel is being put in, if that's possible, if you allow that. Buffering measurements requested, solid fencing, earthen berms, evergreen tree buffers, vegetative screening, larger setbacks from roadways and homes. Let's see, insurance and liability, proof of insurance filing requirements, who monitors compliance, coverage for dog attacks, escapes, property damage, noise complaints, environmental contamination, hours of operation, limitations on customer hours, outdoor kennel activity, deliveries, animal transport. 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. weekdays, maybe the hours, limited weekend hours, no overnight outdoor activity. And if you do end up changing RR2s to R20s, because I know that has been brought up before about changing some of the R2s to R20s. And if that does, it's going to increase the residential density, loss of our rural character, reduce lot size, additional strain on our infrastructure. We're concerned about the water in the wells, groundwater, lower groundwater levels, reduce private well capacity, affect water pressure. Let's see, quality of impact to life, noise, traffic, odor, density increases, commercial activity, diminish our quiet enjoyment of property, rural residential character, privacy, safety, overall quality of life. We request that you conduct public hearings with full neighborhood notification, detailed maps and street locations, require environmental traffic studies, establish strict buffering and operational standards, limit kennel density and operational scale, clarify enforcement mechanism and penalties, and protect existing residential character, infrastructure capacity. And what my main concern and all our concerns is just control these kennels in residential areas because of noise and everything else. Thank you so much.
If someone's putting a kennel up in the allowed property, they meet all of the criteria, would there still be a development plan review?
Yeah.
So there'd still be notice to the abutters? They'd have an opportunity to come?
The question on whether there'd be notice to abutters is basically the size of the kennel, but the thought is that we would regulate this as a commercial use, meaning that a single square foot of a kennel is going to trigger a land development project. The difference between a minor and a major is a minor is 7,500 square feet. If it's under 7,500 square feet, they have a minor land development process in front of us. That would go in front of TRC. We put an ad in the paper with all TRC ads, but there wouldn't be mailing to abutters, just in the same way that any commercial development under that wouldn't. If it's larger, then it would. But the idea is we would treat it like any other commercial development. It'd be subject to all the requirements. If someone wants a variance, they can't be 300 feet from a property line. They can only be 200. Now they've got a variance. Now that triggers a notice for that. That would trigger a review from in front of a board.
So what I was trying to get at is there is an opportunity, whether it's TRC or this commission, if someone was to want to put a kennel on their property in an allowed zone, whether they get a variance or they don't, for the public to come in and raise concerns
Absolutely.
about the hours of operation, just like the gentleman that was here earlier.
Yep.
We may have an opportunity to put further restrictions on that person, given the concerns that were raised. And then if I understand correctly, in addition to that, it will be advertised by the council for a license. And the council would likely entertain public comment before issuing the license.
I don't want to speak for what the council would entertain, but I don't think it's uncommon that the council would take public comment on licensing if there was comment to take. And yes, any new kennel would trigger a new license that would go in front of the council. The advertisement is their agenda, and that folks would have an opportunity to go in front of the
They could
council.
put as many business restrictions on that applicant as they so choose.
I don't want to
within reason.
Yeah, I don't want to speak to the council's authority
Right.
under licensing, but
Okay.
it's fair to
They
say the
could put some
council.
restrictions on the license based on public comment or neighbors' concerns about some of the things that Ms. Kane just brought up about the impacts to the abutters, the impacts to the waste, the smell. All those things could be addressed really in two forms: here on development plan review, or at the TRC and at the council. All this is setting the framework for places that they would be considered an allowable use. As they're not grandfathered in by right, like, hey, guess what? I'm gonna put a kennel up. I met all the requirements, so give me my building permit.
That's correct.
Oh.
Any new kennel has to follow this code. There would be process. Any existing kennel is considered grandfathered. So existing kennels get to keep moving forward as if they were. New kennels have to follow all this code, and there would be review, depending on the size and circumstances, mailed to butters notice.
I think there were a lot of considerations that were brought up that probably would need to be vetted on an individual basis. And I just wanted to make sure I understood correctly. There's a process. It's
Yep.
not like this recommendation. And incidentally, the council's the one that's going to act on the ordinance. We're just making a recommendation one way or the other again, or no recommendation.
It is fair to say that any new kennel or any expansion of a kennel would trigger a more rigorous review process, in which we'd have the right to look at site plans, bring it to TRC, ask questions, and understand the specifics of what's happening.
Okay. Is there anyone else in the audience that wants to speak to this ordinance? Is there anybody on Zoom that wishes to speak to this ordinance on kennels? Raise your hand, please. I see one hand. Two hands now. Okay. So who's coming in? Karen, if you're there, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Get your
I'm-
full name and address for the record, please.
My name is Karen Madolo and I live at 18 North of Platte Road. So right now we live in an HOA. So we don't thankfully we have great neighbors. But I do want to tell you the last address we lived at on John Franklin Road, we had a family next to us that had a really reactive German Shepherd, and they would like tie him up outside. And now I understand that you're saying that there's restrictions around when they're outside and things like that. But I just want you to know what our experience was there. The dog was tied up constantly outside.
Can I just ask one question? Was it one dog or is it, we talking a
was-
kennel?
It was one dog. So it was only one dog. So imagine 20. We would call animal control. And often we had to leave voicemails. There was long periods of time, and then they would just kind of drive by and then they would leave. We often also called at night. It was more often a problem overnight, and we would get the police department and they would tell us that they had better things to do or they didn't have the time to come down and deal with it. Eventually that family moved, and that was such a relief for us. But I want you to know that the animal control, like, you know, the messages that we got when we called both animal control and the police department was like, we're doing the best we can. You have to work with us. And I understand that. 6 months ago, we found a stray cat. We took him in for temporarily, and I left 2 voicemails with animal control, and they never called me back. So we now own that cat. He had worms, he had fleas, he needed to be fixed. He's now a pet of ours, which was not our intention. But I just want you to understand that just because the animal control officer says that this is something that the town can handle, I'm telling you from my experience, we haven't had great luck with animal control. So if the responsibility will be on animal control to manage this, to deal with the nuisance calls, they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it effectively. So either more people will have to be hired, or you'll have to understand that you're going to have really upset neighbors. That is one thing. And then I want to discuss zoning as well. So when we were on that property on John Franklin, we had a neighbor who was cutting trees on our property. We called zoning. They told us that we had to have our property surveyed. It was thousands of dollars because we owned 5 acres. We had our property surveyed and then went back to them, and they said that this was a personal neighbor matter, even though he was cutting trees on our property, that it was something that we needed
Correct.
to get a lawyer to deal with. And then he got chickens and put them. So at this point, our property was marked, and he put the chickens within 5 feet of our property, and some of those little baby chicks turned out to be roosters. So yes, again, I think and then that was at that point that we moved. He's now selling his chicken eggs right at the end of his driveway. So just because you have a document from zoning or you have the sign off from animal control, I think these are all things that look really great on paper. And you can say, yeah, we have this, we have the structure, we have the processes in place. But the fact is that there isn't really the support for residents, to be honest with you. You're on your own. You make a complaint to a department that's supposed to be handling these things, and they tell you that they're understaffed or that your priority just isn't their priority. And so I think I understand that you know, maybe this is something that people want, and you might want to consider doing the special use permit and looking at it on a case by case like you did for the guy with the art studio. Fine. But to just open it up blanketly across the town, I think is a mistake. And I think people, you know, the town employees will be overwhelmed and not be kind of doing what the paper says that they're supposed to do. So that's all I had to say. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. And who else had their hand up on Zoom, please? Put it down. Last call. Anybody else on Zoom want to speak to the kennel ordinance? Okay, I don't see anybody. Anyone else? None of the audience, right? Okay. You got her name again or you want it again? You all set?
Earl Kane, 185 Reed
She's all
Schoolhouse
set.
Road.
Yeah.
The woman that just spoke on Zoom is totally correct. This happens continuously. You are opening a can of worms by putting these kennel licenses all through Coventry. It is irresponsible. It really is. This is almost like retaliation. Why would you even put something like this up and agree about it? I know you're going to say the town council has the next chance, but you should be stopping it here.
Well, we can't stop it. We can either make a recommendation, make an unfavorable
Don't
recommendation.
make it unfavorable. This is just crazy. This is a residential community, for goodness sakes. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, I know. I just
But
don't.
I got one more thing. This is the purpose of the comprehensive plan that we are going through right now, updating. for a municipality to sustain itself economically, socially, and physically, and to maintain a high quality of life, communities must be proactive about planning for their future. A comprehensive plan sets forth a vision for the community. A glimpse of what is a community aspires to be in 20 or more years, and lays out the specific path that, if followed, will achieve the vision. Without such vision and related stewardship, a community will lack foresight, purpose, and will risk compromising a higher quality of life for its residents. Also, it's likely that decision makers will be ill-equipped to address matters tangible or intangible that mean so much to the community and its well-being. The end.
Anybody else? Hearing none. This was just
Because nothing ever gets done. That is why.
anyone on the commission? Yes, Mr. Price.
I do have a question. Thank you. I do have a question. Under definitions, the first sentence for kennels, it says any structure, dwelling, blah, blah, blah. Selling up to 20 dogs over 6 months of age. Should that be 20 dogs in a 6-month period?
No, actually, the 6 months of age is, the concept is that if someone's running a kennel, let's just say they have 15 dogs as part of their kennel, and then one of the dogs is having puppies. The concept is it's not infrequent that puppies would then go over the required number of dogs. There's a period of time in which those puppies are then generally,
The puppies aren't as
solicited.
allowed and they're being sold.
Yeah, I
quickly
think,
usually.
that was after consultation with all the staff. We thought it's understood that when you have puppies, I mean, a litter can be quite large.
Yeah.
So if there was a restriction on
you
having a
wanna
total number of
restrict-
dogs, including
Yeah.
newborn puppies, we'd probably have kennels that are doing
So
a
you
lot
want
of
to
this.
restrict the older dogs, the larger dogs
Yeah.
that do all the barking and all the. Okay.
I think the idea is that if a dog within a kennel has puppies, essentially that kennel owner has 6 months to sort of find homes to keep their kennel at a level set.
Level. Okay,
Yep.
I get it. I get it now.
Hey, Doug, did the council look at all at eliminating some of the places you can put kennels, like
Yeah,
doing
I mean,
R2,
I think that it's the purview of the council if they wish to, let's just say, not allow kennels in R20 and R2 zones. To be honest, there's probably a lot of opportunity to further restrict or change this code. It's difficult to predict what the council may wish to do. It's understood that we've gotten public comments here. I think that folks that are commenting should know that they should be commenting again at the council, and that the council is where we have the advertised hearing. So the assumption is that that's where most people would be going. I think taking all of that input into account, the council may wish to further restrict this. It's difficult for this planning commission to understand how they would wish to advise the council because we haven't had the public hearing on the matter. Not all the information is in front of the council at this point. It's difficult for this commission to split hairs on an ordinance. But I'm hearing the same concerns you are. I can understand where the council might wish to go if they wish to restrict this. And that would be the purview of the council.
Yeah, and I think it would have been maybe objective and maybe with the proper support to say, hey, we don't mind kennels in town, but not in this zone.
Yeah.
And, we don't want them in town at all. So-
Yeah, I think that the idea is that this came from a place where we know there's interest in this use and the use is not currently allowed. The council may have in mind a much more restrictive version of this. In terms of the zones it's allowed, we basically picked up from where it was left off 2 years ago. But it might be that the council's purview at this point in time is to maybe not allow it in any residential zone, not allow it in the smaller scale residential zones. There's a range of different things. The council might say 300 separate feet of separation distance isn't enough. I think there's a lot of abilities to work with this code and make it more restrictive, but it does depend on what the interest of the council is. So that Certainly, planning staff will be there. Will be a resource to the council if they wish to ask questions on the background of this. We'll have all that information at their fingertips.
Any change that the council makes, any restriction, any change to the ordinance, that would come back?
No.
That wouldn't come back?
No, there are changes that can be made on the floor of the council hearing that would be fine for them to make, and essentially whatever recommendation this board chooses to make on it, the assumption is they're taking that piece of information, but then they're doing what they wish to at the hearing and moving forward. There's probably a limited number of things the council might do with this that would cause for it to need to be reposted. If the council said, I'd like to completely rewrite this, we need to completely change everything, we'd probably say what we're heading towards is drafting a new ordinance and posting the new ordinance. But modifying the structure that's here, that can all be done on the floor of the public hearing.
Anyone else? So I just want to make sure we can make a recommendation as written. We can make an unfavorable recommendation as written. We can make no recommendation, or we can make a recommendation with changes.
I mean, your recommendation is a communication tool. Generally, I'd like to know if your recommendation is leaning positive or negative. That's a good way to communicate. You're allowed to communicate to the council. We give a favorable recommendation, but we note that we heard concerns and we think the council should be conscious of the concerns that exist. That's a fine
That's
recommendation.
kind of what I was leaning towards, because, I think they might want to take a hard look at some of the concerns that were raised.
Yeah. One thing I would note is when we do any zoning recommendation, there's two findings that need to be made. Generally, the process accounts that the planning commission accounts for those findings. One is that the ordinance is consistent with the comprehensive plan. I would ask, when you consider the type of recommendation you're going to make, whether you're wishing to make those findings on the record or not. That will be important for what the council may wish to do with it moving forward.
So we have the planning department memorandum that outlines some of that. So at this time, does anyone want to make a motion with a recommendation to the town council one way or the other, even if it amends what's currently before us, or with a recommendation to approve with change, so that we can move on this?
I don't know about the rest of it, but for me, I think they need to relook at it. I don't feel comfortable making a positive recommendation, and I think there are just too many changes that need to be made. Some of the things that aren't in here is like the type of building that's built, right? Where it goes, can they dictate the type of building that's built so it reduces noise and stuff like that? Where's it going to be put? Is it going to be put in a residential zone? Are you going to limit residential zones? I just don't think there's enough in the ordinance to protect the public with kennels. That's just my own feeling. So, I mean, I don't feel in a position to make a positive or negative because I just don't think there's enough in the ordinance.
Who was that? Did you say you agree with what he just said?
I do agree. I
Okay.
agree with
No.
with emphasis on, forward to the council that there were concerns from the public, and they're going to hear that at their hearing as well. So I guess that's a second, if that was a motion.
Well, no, just a discussion.
That's just a discussion.
Has to say, I mean.
Yeah, it's not uncommon. I mean, you could make a recommendation not to adopt the ordinance as written. Or we could just not make any recommendation at all, or I just don't want to do nothing without further any. And why don't we just poll the members? Mr. Blue, what are your comments?
As a resource to the commission, I think it may be wise. Animal Control Officer Lacombe is present. She deals with this in a much more hands-on way. She's been here for years. She's been here when previous kennels were permitted and allowed. I guess she's a resource to the commission if you have questions. That might be a useful thing to understand how these generally go. And not to put you on the spot, but you're here, you're available, you're on the spot.
Yeah.
I was saying we had dinosaurs in kennels, but
So,
I haven't had that long.
Just,
Karen-
want her name and address?
60 Wood Street, Coventry. Apologize for my appearance. I had a family emergency tonight, so I would be in uniform, so please, I apologize. We need something. No disrespect to Ms. Kane, but she's totally wrong on how the process used to work. Before 2024, someone would come into zoning and say, I need a special use permit. Zoning would say, okay, here's your special use permit. They would walk into the town hall, they would give that to the clerk, and they would get their kennel license. A year later, we would find out in animal control that these people had a kennel. Now we're doing a kennel inspection on something that was already approved. With over the years, working with Doug and the new clerk over at the town clerk's office, we have an agreement that if somebody wants a kennel, they give us a call, run the people by the police department, see if there's anything illegal that they've done, or just run it by us, because sometimes we know good and bad people. And now we all work together. But at least if we had something in writing to go by, we need to be able to give people kennel licenses. In thinking that somebody gets a kennel license and they're going to have 10, 20 dogs and they're going to breed those dogs, I believe we might have 5 or 6 kennel licenses in Coventry, and we have one person that breeds. Never had a problem with that kennel whatsoever. Not with the septic, not with the noise, and they're out on the western end, but they're pretty close to their neighbors. No problem whatsoever. I'm asking on the animal control end if I could have a say in an evacuation plan. If something happens, nobody thought of that. Something happened, there was a fire. What do we do with these 20 dogs? I can't put them at the pound. We don't have a problem with people that have kennels that dump their dogs at our pound. That's not a thing. We just need the ability to have authorization to give somebody a kennel license. And it doesn't happen that often. Maybe over the last 2 years, we've had 2 or 3 people come to us asking for a kennel license. Now, I have those people that I know have more than 4 dogs. What do I say to those people? Hold off, we're working on getting a kennel license. And now, if they can't have a kennel license, I know they're in violation of the town ordinance. I can't do anything about it. So that's the predicament we're in. We need something. We need some type of ordinance, some type of way to get these people that are looking to comply with the town ordinance to get them a kennel license.
Do they usually own the dogs or they board the dogs?
We have different people some people do it, own them to breed them. Some people do them as doggy daycare type boarding overnight. Some people just have 6 or 7 dogs that they want. Some people just have that many dogs as pets. Like I said, I only have one person in Coventry that does it to breed dogs.
No, I asked because I can imagine it's amazing the number of people that have dogs now. And if they go away for the weekend, they need a place to board them.
Correct.
And I that's why I asked, are the kennels that we do have, do they board or they they do?
There are some that
Some,
board,
okay.
yes. Yes,
We have 5 now in town.
I
6,
believe so,
5 or 6.
somewhere around there.
Have there ever been more? 8, 9?
No,
10?
we've gone down.
We've gone down?
We've gone down. There used to be, I think, when I started 20-something years ago, we used to have like 10, but those people have stopped doing it and we don't have that many anymore.
Do we get any complaints?
I haven't
the
had
police-
nobody that I've had to take off the list. There was one kennel that we did have, and that's going to be my issue when we go to the town council, is how do we void somebody? I had a kennel that was operating that we had cruelty charges against them, and we couldn't stop them from breeding, stop them, or revoke their kennel license. So that's my other question, I guess, to the town council. How can we revoke somebody's license that they have it? But that we've only had a problem with one commercial boarding facility in Coventry over my career, and they're no longer in business anymore.
And every kennel license needs to go before the town council, and there will be a hearing.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't call it a hearing. So
Public
there'd be a public meeting. Every kennel that wishes to operate would need a kennel license. And the way to think about it is there's 2 separate authorities that they need to be approved under. There's the authority under zoning, And then there's the authority under the licensing with the council.
So in my opinion, please don't do nothing. Please, please tell us what we need to do to get it to pass, or at least,
Well, keep in mind, we've made no recommendation to town council before. They're going to get this back to vote on it either way. It's just a matter of whether we feel comfortable with it as written.
yes, and we already had a great working relationship with Doug and his team getting this together. We all sat, we all brainstormed, and came up with this ordinance.
Is there any way of coming up with like a graduated license, so to speak, like someone who just has those 5 or 6 dogs, or someone who just may want to do a doggy daycare for 10 dogs versus a full kennel license?
Doug actually had that. He wanted a small kennel and a large kennel. But then, okay, so you have a small kennel of only 4 or 5 dogs, but those dogs are German Shepherds, opposed to 4 or 5 little Shih Tzus. You know, there's a difference, you know, that you can have a small kennel for only 5 or 6 dogs, but if you have a large breed dog,
Sometimes you could be making just as much
Yes.
noise as a
yes.
smaller dog kennel.
That's a possibility to create gradations of this use.
The council can form that if they so desire, that they can have graduated levels of kennel licenses with different restrictions on inspections and everything else. That's well into the council's purview. And that's why I'm saying that, and I understand what you're saying, but I think more should be put into this.
Yeah, because
Right.
that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, so if we could allow larger kennels in the larger land areas where we have some of these smaller lot sizes, restricting those smaller kennels to the smaller lot sizes. And I understand what you're saying, sometimes big dogs, but there has to be some way of controlling it without just allowing it to get too big on a small lot.
There are other communities other states that do that, where they have bigger kennels in some areas, smaller kennels in other areas. They dictate how these structures are built to reduce noise. There's one in Florida that is in the middle of a residential area and you don't hear anything. Why? Because they had ordinances that said if you're going to put it here, this is the requirements you have to have with cinder
Right.
block walls and all the
So
other
let's,
stuff.
but I don't want to leave it up to the town council to try to remember that stuff when they're giving a permit out. That's stuff that should be built into this ordinance.
That's why I'm saying I do not believe this ordinance is where it should be for kennels. And now, is it a start? Yes. But it needs to get bigger. Coventry is growing, right? We're gonna be 40,000 people. Are there gonna be people that need to board dogs? Yes, right?
So my question would be more or less, is this something that we can approve as a starting point with the knowledge to the town council that we think this needs more thought to really, because we don't want to hold up people that need it, but at the same time, we don't want to have allow kennels in every area that end up going to be too big for the.
To answer your question, yes, you could send this along with either a favorable, negative, or neutral recommendation, and then that allows the council to pick it up. The council might have ideas on gradations. The idea is that if you had a kennel of 5 dogs, you're held to all the same standards you would be held to a kennel of 20. The council might say, I like that part. I also just don't think kennels should be allowed in R20, R2, R3. That might be fine. They might say, let's create a category of kennels under 6, but those are allowed in R20, R2. That might be one direction. Trust me, when we sat with this use, the idea is it used to be that the use would just come in front of a board and someone would make a case, and based upon no standards, the board would decide yes or no. So now we're the first effort of trying to write standards. Oftentimes it's difficult to anticipate where the decision makers, and in this case that's the council, might wish to go with this. More restrictive here, less restrictive there. I think it's up to the board in terms of how you wish to communicate, your input on this ordinance. And it could be that you offer a neutral recommendation with the consideration the board look at the concerns or issues that had been addressed as part of this initial comment phase through this project. There's a range, it's a communication tool is what you've got.
Yeah, and taking into account the comments that we heard tonight, favorable and unfavorable, and the comments of the members of this board, what I'm hearing is we need to strike a better balance. That's really what it comes down to. We don't want to see these have a negative impact on some folks unintentionally. We got to put safeguards in place. And in other areas, we want to allow them because there certainly is a need and the town's growing and people need places to board their dogs. And it's something that people do. So at least what I'm getting out of this is we know we want to, we realize that there's a need for some type of a kennel, a path to get kennels in town, but this doesn't go far enough. And there's probably some areas where we need to have more restriction rather than, yep, you can have it in these zones, here's the distances and have at it. And then we have a problem. If I understood.
I think you're right there.
So and that's our job, to strike that balance. We don't want to adversely affect folks. And by the same token, we don't want to restrict people that want to use their property for a worthwhile use. So how do we communicate that? That's the question.
Does the town council get a planning director's report with
The town, we
information we
generally,
discussed tonight?
the idea is that the report that you have received is generally attached to whatever recommendation that this board sends. So this little bit of background that they've received, they'll get. And I might also add that we could advise as part of this that the council may wish to review the YouTube video of this meeting if they wish to understand some of the nuance and details of the comments we've received. That would be my best guidance. Now it's up to you whether you wish to communicate this with any sort of inclination of positive, negative, neutral. I get the feeling that regardless, you're going to communicate that this ordinance, there should be careful consideration and may require amendments to meet the various needs. But my understanding from this board is you don't have anything specific other than just cautioning the council to take their time with it and provide a due diligence on it.
I don't know what the appropriate form of a motion would be, but it would be to make a recommendation to the town council that they consider some type of a ordinance to allow kennels, but that the proposed ordinance that's in front of us is not really sufficient to address both the needs in terms of allowing kennels versus some of the concerns we're hearing about how it might impact abutting properties.
Fair enough.
And that would be it.
I think one thing I'd ask for the board to consider is there are positive findings that staff have made. Findings should be made. There's two findings that need to be made whenever you make any kind of zoning amendment. The findings are generally rendered by this board. They don't have to be, but they should be rendered on the record eventually. So I would ask the board to consider whether they believe they can render findings that the ordinance is consistent with the comprehensive plan and if it's consistent with the purposes of zoning. If the board can't render those findings, that's fine. You can communicate that the board did not make any of the required findings and we communicate that you should be cautious. What it lets us know is that the council, if they do believe this is the right ordinance after perhaps amendments, they would need to make findings on the record. So I think that's worthwhile for you thinking about. Would you agree you should make findings at this point, or would you suggest you should not?
Perhaps the findings in discussing those a little bit further will help us get to a point where we, I guess, know where we want to go with this. Because as I'm reading it, it kind of lines up with what Rick just said. Generally, we're in favor of something. We just don't know that this is quite up to the task. So for instance, it says here, personal related to the comprehensive plan, one of the findings being personal services such as kennels or boarding of animals are generally considered an acceptable use within both residential and non-residential districts. I think we, based on what I'm hearing, we agree with that. However, moving further to the purposes, the proposed ordinance promotes the health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the public. Perhaps it's not quite up to that task. So I think we can discuss these findings in greater detail, and then maybe that will point us in the right direction.
Okay, guys, we got to do something.
May I say, I'm okay with the ordinance as is for the specific reason. I don't remember the animal control lady's name, so I apologize for that. But the collaboration between her, Doug, and the town clerk seems to be working cohesively, and that has facilitated the positives to which she has stated. And the ordinance that is presently in front of us gives us enough leeway to expound in the future in the event emergencies may occur, develop, transpire. And the balance which has been struck between the planning department, animal control, and the town clerk, to me, makes the ordinance presently comfortable enough. And in the future, if there's a need to expand, because the lady has stated that since she's been there, there's been a reduction, only one breeder, and taking into consideration sizes of dogs, sizes of kennel, etc. I think it's a balance to begin with. So I'm comfortable with their presentation as it is.
Anyone else?
Just back to circle back to what John had just said, Member Studley, about the health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the public. If we're not there yet, then this doesn't satisfy the two that we're looking for, correct?
Yeah, correct. I think it's just worth noting if this board as a collective unit does not feel they can make the findings, that's worth knowing and communicating for the council, which means that if the council does believe that, let's just say on the floor of the council hearing, they make amendments, they get to this place where they're happy, I'm going to note you should, for the record, make findings about whether this ordinance is consistent now with those provisions. Any zoning ordinance amendment needs to come with it required findings. So it doesn't need to be made by this board. It generally is. Generally, this board makes findings, and then those findings go to the council. The council knows the findings are made on the record, and then they move it from there. It's possible the council makes those findings after consideration changes, whatever may occur.
So essentially, a positive recommendation is almost off the board. No.
It's up to the full commission.
I don't think I would give it a
Yeah.
completely positive recommendation. I don't think I'd have a problem with a neutral recommendation.
I'm in the neutral area right now.
With that fact being that I feel changes or some additions, I wouldn't say changes, I'd say additions need to be made.
I would agree with that. You know, I'll agree also, but I'm going to take it a step further, and I'm a negative recommendation, because every time we do something like this, All right, you approve it, it goes, it passes, and what's gonna happen to it? Right there. And we're never gonna relook at it again,
Yeah, I
right? That's my fear with this. We keep it on the hot plate until it's where it needs to be, right? And people will work it. And again, it's not the planning, the council has to get involved in this based off of the public hearing, right? And come up with something that's gonna work. Otherwise, hey, been on the council, you guys have been here a long time. What happens to these things? They just sit there, right? Yes, they have something, but they have something that's gonna come back and when and they're gonna have to fight these issues later on and all these complications and everything else, instead of us putting something in ordinance that says, okay, you got small kennels, you got big kennels, they can be out in they can't be in an R20 zone, they can be in an R5 zone. It can be in an R5 zone this big. I'm just saying, the town's getting bigger. We need to start taking a closer look at what we're doing and what we're presenting. So I'm a no. A negative response to the council. on this one.
How can we couch that into a motion? In other words, an unfavorable recommendation of the ordinance as written, citing that some of the concerns you just raised, although it may be consistent with the comprehensive plan, it does not appear to demonstrate.
Again, this is a good start, I believe, but again, if we sit here and we say yes to it, right, give it a positive recommendation, council's gonna take it, they're gonna have their public hearing. The council may turn around and say, hopefully, now we gotta look at it deeper, but the council could also just pass it, right? I think we have an obligation to them to say, this is a good start, council, but we're not gonna give it a favorable recommendation because further work has to be done on this, we believe.
And it sounds like that is the consensus. There's everybody that was here said they would, except for Gavi at the end said, I'm not inclined to give it a favorable recommendation as written. He said neutral and then convey some of our thoughts. And you said, I don't even want to give him neutral. I'd rather just give him negative and put it right on the record. So if that's what we want to communicate, let's just put it in a motion and let's just move on.
Is it possible to have a workshop to draft an ordinance?
I mean, my thought is that the best step is to get this into the council where on June 9th, they'll have a hearing. Then we got all the public feedback is put on the table and the council at that point can direct the next step. The council might feel at that point they have enough information to say, we know what we want to do. Or the council might say, we still wish to have more fine tuning of this. Sure. This is the kind of thing where ultimately the council is the decision maker, I think should dictate if anything, they think this needs and what process they think might be appropriate to get it where they'd like to get it. I can tell you, I mean, I get that this is a complex code, but I think for the grand scheme of things, it's hard to know if the council's going to want to prioritize this as a workshop for this type of code, something that we've had 5 to 6 kennels in town, or if they're going to suggest another process to address it. They might direct staff to come up with a sub-A, and give us ideas to research and come up with a sub-A. There's a lot of different directions this could go. My suggestion is that think about your role as it's going to go to the council as the decision maker. You get a chance to communicate what you wish to them. If you're going to communicate you have concerns, the council naturally might say, what are the nature of the concerns? Would you direct us? And if the idea is we just want you to have a thorough due diligence of it, we don't have any specific recommendations, then just make that clear to them so they know no specific recommendations, but we think that you should be very conscious of concerns that exist and do your due diligence on it.
So how about if we make a recommendation that further review needs to be done specifically in the areas of where kennels should be located, types of kennel licenses.
Being a zoning ordinance, I think the zoning side and the licensing side are separate.
So we'll stay away from that then,
Yep.
all right?
What was the first thing you said?
I said, areas, zones, whether or not what zones they should be in, maybe some zones should be eliminated. Additionally, the types of buildings that need to be considered within the regulation, structure size, size of space that's needed per dog, right? Other things like, to your point, ventilation, dog space, right? Stuff like that that need to be looked at, structure of the building. Distance from,
Please come back.
go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you're fine.
If you get licensed through the state,
Yeah.
all that stuff comes into play.
Okay,
If
then what,
Certain size.
then let's take this state, let's look at the state regulation, and let's put it in here.
Well, again, the state regulations are about licensing. So I think what Animal Control Officer Lacombe is saying is under licensing, a dog kennel has to meet certain criteria.
You're right, but certain criteria about space and everything else, so
The ordinance.
put it in here.
But just keep in mind, the licensing might talk about types of entities that can own it.
Yeah.
Zoning probably wouldn't get into the type of entity. Zoning and licensing,
I'm not talking about anything. She just said that it talks about space and stuff like that, right? Talks about how much space a dog needs and issues like that, correct?
Yeah,
Within the
for
state
commercial
regulation.
business.
Take that state
So if you're not,
regulation.
but what if you're not running a commercial business? Do you want to have all those regulations as well?
Then add that.
would we want to add all those regulations for someone that wants to own 5 dogs as pets?
Then maybe we exempt that. But it's in here. So there's nobody guessing anymore. Right? It's in here.
Well, the
That's
idea
what
is,
the ordinance is supposed to do, right?
let's picture that there's licensing code that exists on this. And licensing authority is outside of zoning. So if we want to replicate all of the licensing requirements in zoning, that means that where someone might normally have an ability to seek relief from the license, they're seeking a zoning variance. It might be that, someone that wants to have 5 dogs can't meet some stipulation that's applicable to a license, and they'd seek an easy, quick exemption at the state level. For us, it becomes a full zoning variance hearing. So that's why generally we had the concept that if it's controlled by licensing, then we would have the authority would be the council to consider all the licensing issues. The land use is generally a different consideration. That's where it's allowed, what zoning districts, all
But
those
within
things.
there are also specifications, right, that the state says. All I'm saying is we take a look at the state law, we take those things that deal with zoning issues, that deal with space issues, that deal with stuff like that, and we put it in here.
When they come for development plan review, because they would have to do that, right? Or go to TRC, that's when we would look at those aspects.
Let's be clear. So licensing code and zoning code are different. When a business opens up, someone wants to open a nightclub. Zoning code would tell us where in town would we allow a nightclub. Zoning wouldn't tell someone the specifics of how they might lose their license. That would be a licensing code issue. And generally, the more you try to write it so that both would do both, suddenly it becomes a little bit more cumbersome. Now we're writing in zoning the stipulations upon which the number of occupants of a building on a given night past a certain hour would result in a zoning violation, when generally you might lose your license. Now we're talking about that as a zoning violation. That's generally why zoning sticks to land use. It generally sticks to the areas of town you want the use. It sticks to the exterior improvements. It generally stays away from the details of some of the things that are more appropriate for licensing. But I'm open. I just foresee it being difficult to get more complex code than this across the finish line than more restrictive code. We can make this more restrictive. Making it more complex may not be the path to go.
Right, and that restrictive is actually a very good word. I was actually thinking of that. In other words, what it sounds like is this board is looking for more restrictions and more definitions to make it so that it's not carte blanche. These are the zones, these are the districts, have at it. There's different situations. It's not, they don't want a one size fits all, to make sure we strike the balance, given what neighborhood it ends up in, what zone, how big the lot is, how many dogs. Those are all the considerations that just on, it's a framework and it's, you know, and it works, but it sounds like there's some reluctance to make a favorable recommendation. So I just want to, quite honestly, just whatever the concerns are, let's just put them in a motion and then send it over.
Yeah, so my only concern is I don't want to restrict it where the family that has the 5 dogs can't get a kennel license in their residential neighborhood. I want to still be able to let them do that, but I don't want them putting in a full kennel where they're going to be breeding dogs and selling them in the small residential neighborhood that they're in. So that's what I'm getting to.
And as written, I'm sorry to interrupt, but as written, if they want 6 dogs and they're in the R20 zone, they could have 2 acres.
Yeah, as written, the second you have 5 dogs, whether your intent was they're just extra pets or I'm heading towards a kennel, you're held to the same standards. So the code's current approach is
And then if
to
you-
regulate it all the same.
But you could come for a variance.
You could.
Right, okay. That's
And
what-
then the board would have the ability to say yes or no and treat it as a discretional decision. What I'm hearing from the board, if this makes sense, is that it's a non-specific recommendation where the board feels more study is needed around the zoning districts where kennels should be allowed, and more study is needed around potential different gradations of numbers of dogs and how that might relate to more restrictive or less restrictive regulations. Is that a fair assessment of the 2 of the primary concerns?
From my end, that's a positive, yes.
Okay.
So who can put that into a motion?
I think I can do it. I'm just trying to we need improvement. And I'm just hung up on the health and safety, morals and welfare of the public. We're trying to improve this ordinance to satisfy that to a greater level. If I can, if it meets the ordinance and the zoning code, if the findings of fact are there. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I'm all ears, Member Burke. I think it's ultimately up to you. I think that the 2 things that you should.
Can I make a neutral recommendation
Sure.
with, and it doesn't, and we don't satisfy those 2?
Yeah. Yeah, you can make a neutral recommendation and say that you did not make any findings at this point in time. And you are free to also communicate areas in which you think you've heard concerns and you believe need additional due diligence by the council.
Before you get too far with the motion, I'm sorry. So it sounds like, and I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, a favorable recommendation with any additional language is likely not going to pass. So we've either got the neutral or the unfavorable recommendation with the same thing. Unfavorable because we don't believe it passes that litmus test there. And the things that Doug just said, we're trying to strike a better balance and look for, and I can't remember what you rattled off, the number of dogs, the size.
Yeah, it would be the zoning districts where it's allowed and the consideration of introducing gradations of different scales of
At a
cats.
minimum, they could look at other things as well.
Yep, for sure.
So I just want to make sure if he makes a neutral recommendation with that language versus a unfavorable recommendation, does it make a difference to anybody before he makes his motion? Doesn't matter. Okay.
So to me, I feel a neutral recommendation is heading in the right direction. That's why I'm looking that way, because I feel if a negative recommendation is forwarded, it's like, is it back to the drawing board with this?
It's hard to know what the council will do. Keep in mind, what you're doing doesn't close or open a door on the council's end. It's a communication tool.
I'm good with neutral as long as it stipulates that there has to be further discussion on the ordinance. If we want to make it simple.
Further discussion in relation to zoning districts allowed.
Correct.
Number of dogs to include more or less restrictions. Those were the two things we jotted down a minute ago.
Right, including but not
Because-
limited.
because-
Including
but not limited to.
Because let's be honest, right? Even for that person with the 5 dogs, or the 4 dogs, right? There are neighbors. We had one just talk, it will be it has the potential to be a huge nuisance,
Even one dog. yes.
right? Even one dog, right? So we have to strike a balance, right? Understand you don't want to hurt that person who's got 4 dogs. But if a person's got 4 dogs and he's living in, in a townhouse that's 900 square feet, we got a problem here. So
Can it go based by the breed of dogs?
some communities do. But I don't want to go there either though, because you're right, because now you're pigeonholing certain dogs. So, and I think that, or maybe there should be some, but that should be left up to them, okay? For that kind of stuff, if the dog's a hazard or something like that. Don't want to get into that because there are some dogs that are great dogs that have been pigeonholed, right?
Right.
But I think overall, we have to look at this, at where are we gonna place kennels and the amount of space that's required for these dogs in those areas. I think that's within our purview as zoning, right? And then we can make a recommendation maybe that the council looks at other things that's within their purview that they have over to include licensing.
One outcome of all of this is that the council might review its own licensing guidelines on this use.
That's up to
And
them.
that would be a separate matter, but that might be where some of this heads. It's hard to know where that might go.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion.
Yes, sir. Thank
If
you.
you will have it. This is for agenda item 8.7, proposed kennel use ordinance 2026-17. This proposed zoning code amendment will allow the use of dog kennels in all zones except for the VRC, VMC, I2 zones, and establish new supplementary regulations for kennels and outdoor enclosures. I am going to forward a neutral recommendation to the town council. And I find that this ordinance as written is not consistent with the standards for the required findings of fact with regard to the town's comprehensive plan and purposes of the zoning code. Our findings tonight, after deliberation, we believe the ordinance, we feel a need for kennels in the town. This ordinance could use improvement, including but not limited to zoning districts where they're allowed, number of dogs allowed, and whether they are more or less restrictive. And I also, with this neutral recommendation to the town council, I suggest they get up to speed on the planning commission's meeting this evening and take into account the public comment. And I'll include the planning director's memorandum in my recommendation to the council.
I
I'll
have a
second
motion.
the
I
recommendation.
have a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion as read? Vote aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Thank you very much.
that's something done.
Moving. Sorry.
Don't apologize. Okay, we still have another item on the agenda. This is a advisory recommendation on ordinance 2026-18 for proposed gasoline service station use. Let me just make sure I captured everything here. think I'm missing something here. Walmart has proposed this zoning code amendment to allow the use of gas stations in the business park zone and establish restrictions on the distance that gasoline service stations would have to be from other sensitive uses. Mr. Planning Director, would you like to give us some opening remarks on this?
Sure.
Thank you.
We do have two ordinances related to gas stations. I think it may be wise to somehow consider them in coordinated fashion. I would note there's a representative from Walmart here. Walmart would like to add a gas station to their property. Gas stations are similar to what happened with kennels, previously allowed in town in multiple different commercial zoning districts with a special use permit. When we shut special use permits down, gas stations became not allowed. We always had the intent that gas station as a land use would come back into town. And this is code that is providing that additional layers of restriction. Again, we're working with separation distances. As a high level, you'll note that there's a 100-foot separation distance of the gas pumps to a residential property line. There's a lesser distance if it's a commercial property. At the end of the day, the Walmart was interested in pursuing the gas station. Staff felt that those separation distances were a component of allowing that use. So in addition to what Walmart wants, we thought this was the moment to suggest our general business zone. So that's Tioga and Sandy Bottom and Nooseneck, which has a number of gas stations. This is the moment to also consider re-allowing gas stations in the general business zone. Because Walmart has a specific ask in the business park, we've separated their ask from what staff would suggest is looking at the general business zone and the industrial one zone. And then the code that staff has suggested, and that's 2026-19, that's the code staff has. We had a lot of general cleanup of some of our auto-oriented code. So I think we saw this as a moment of, if we're focusing on it, let's get it right. So you've got what Walmart wants and the basic provisions that we think accommodate that. And then on top of that, you've got staff asking for you to consider this in a broader fashion and with some code cleanup along with it. That's enough for now. The representative from Walmart is here. Although their particular site, they have studied, they've done a traffic review, a traffic study for their site. But what Walmart's asking for is essentially to allow it throughout the entire business park zone.
Okay. All right. So when I opened up this item, I didn't catch the one on the second page that's related. So 2026-19, and that would be the next agenda item. So we can take them both together. If there's anyone here that wishes to speak on well, first of all, does anyone in the commission have any questions or concerns with this? Everyone had a chance to look at it? Okay. We just need your name and address. Thanks for staying so late.
My name is Zahor and I'm an attorney with Higgins.
Green button, red button, yeah.
My name is Melissa Horn. I'm an attorney with Higgins, Kavanaugh and Cooney, and I represent Walmart, Inc. The planner has largely summarized our request, and that is to amend the zoning ordinance to allow gasoline service stations, full or self-serve, as a new permitted use in the business park zone. As he said, these were previously allowed through special use permits. We have included in our request restrictions on the placement of fuel pumps within specific distances from residential properties, as well as light intrusion restrictions to protect residential properties from the impact of these fuel stations. And, we've heard a lot about balance tonight. We think that our proposal is balancing a use that's consistent with the general uses within the business park zone. I will note that there is at least one fuel station in the business park at center of New England. BJ's has one. And so balancing that use within the business park zone with any neighboring, there is a residential neighborhood adjacent to the Walmart property, and we'd like to be respectful of those neighbors. We try to do that in all cases anyway, and we would do that with this amendment as well. So therefore, I would request that you make a favorable recommendation to the council on the amendment to allow fuel facilities within the business park zone.
Was this a special use permit in the business park zone before?
Yes.
Okay, I was trying to figure out how BJ's got one, that's all.
Yes. Going to ask the same thing.
Yeah, okay. So again, we're looking at the end from 2024, but prior to that, it was an S. Okay. Anyone on the commission?
I'm happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Now, Doug, the recommendation to this, again, the council will approve this.
Correct.
Should Walmart decide to do that, they're gonna have to come back before us anyways, correct?
If Walmart decides to pursue a gas station, assuming that the use becomes allowed, the size of the gas station and convenience store would probably be less than 7,500 square feet, meaning that it would qualify as a by right minor land development. It goes to TRC and it gets a decision by the administrative officer. So it wouldn't come to the board. That's my loose understanding, but they haven't proposed
So there wouldn't be a public hearing on the gas station.
the
Because there is a
specific.
difference between BJ's and Walmart. Walmart's much closer to a residential area.
Yep.
There's wetlands behind there.
Yep.
BJ's is at the far end. It's down below on a hill. There is no residential area near there.
Yeah, I think certainly both sites are different. Let's keep in mind what we're allowing is it across the entire zone. It just happens that Walmart is here because they have the acute need for a gas station. I would note when Walmart was submitting documents and heading down this path, they did submit a traffic study of how it would impact their specific property. It was a well-conceived traffic study. It found that there would be no issues. At the end of the day, keep in mind what Walmart's seeking will have a specific outcome at their property, but they're seeking to allow it across the entire zone. And that's how we're applying these standards, as if it was to be allowed across the entire zone.
I just remember when they were gonna add the loading facility or something on the people that showed up from that condominium just because of the truck traffic over there. They you just don't know.
I don't know that I've been before the planning board before. It might have been the zoning board, but I've been here on a couple of different Walmart matters and you know.
Oh, no, they were gonna have some type of a thing for for, I don't know whether it was pickup. They they pulled it back and they just use what they have now, but there was some type of expansion going on that end of the building that drew a number of residents from the condominiums.
Right.
To oppose, mostly because of the truck traffic that turns around down there and then parks and idles adjacent to their property. So I just wonder what they would say about a gas station. Is that where, would the gas station be at that end of your property, or is it? I don't know if trying to put these distance in perspective from memory.
It is in it would be the southeast corner. It's in the opposite corner of
Okay,
the
so
Walmart
closer to-
property from those, we're as far away from,
right.
yeah, we're as far away as from the residential property as we can get. And actually, it was a site that when this store was originally allowed, there was a carve out on the property for a fuel station, and they just didn't ever put one in, and now is the time to do that. So it is as far away from the residential
And that's
area
good
as
to hear in
possible.
your situation, but let me just ask you, if you were to employ the distances that are in the ordinance, would they be able to put it at the other end of the property, or is it too close?
Not within 100 feet of that property line that is your residential. So that's that 100-foot standard. The gas pumps couldn't be closer than 100 feet.
What I can't get in my mind is where how far is 100 feet? Is it from the property line of the other parcel, or is it from the building, the condos?
You have to say that again.
Is the 100 feet measured from the property line to the?
Oh, yeah,
fuel
yes.
s-
It's
for the
it's
fuel
the
station?
100,
Okay.
the separation distance is measured from the fuel pumps
Mm.
to the property line where there's a residential.
Because I almost
zone.
want to say at
So
the
that
other end
would-
of,
That buffer zone would include the street that's between the
right.
residential property and the pump.
When you say street, are you referring to a private roadway on the Walmart parcel?
I don't know if it's a private roadway or whether
Yeah.
it's part of,
Yeah.
part of some of the street system that's down there. So like I know that between BJ's and Home Depot, which both use at the red light there, but that's, I believe, a street, not
Yeah.
either property.
Right.
I don't know what it is in Walmart. They have that
Same thing.
wider area. I don't know whether that's.
I don't think,
street
I know
or
that
Walmart property.
that's not a public road because all the roads there are private. And I want to say that that's carved out in Walmart's property, which means that we're measuring from the pump location to property line. If that roadway is just a private roadway on Walmart's property, yeah, we'd measure through there.
Not that that makes a difference, just asking. the
Yeah, yeah,
question.
yeah, fair enough.
But again, Doug, this ordinance isn't specific. I mean, Walmart is up here
Correct.
talking, but this is not specific to Walmart. This is specific to the business park. Should the council adopt this ordinance?
Correct. Should this be adopted, a gas station can go in any viable parcel in the business park, so long as they meet the additional restrictions we placed in here.
It wouldn't affect Walmart if you changed it to 200 feet or 150 feet
No,
in the business park.
no. I mean, I will say, when we talk about the separation distance, in this case of 100 feet, staff did conduct some studies of this. Again, gas stations across town, this was not a use that we wanted to remain as permanently banned. We had conducted some review of this when there was a potential application coming at a separate site. That site would have been in the general business zone. That's when we began to conduct our research. We looked at what other communities in the area have for code. We ended up selecting more conservative standards. There's many communities that allow gas stations and they can be right on top of residential. So we tried to be thorough and thoughtful and selecting standards that we thought were applicable. It's fair to say that there's a lot of gas stations on Tioga. A lot of those gas stations probably would find themselves within 100 feet of residential. Those wouldn't be allowed today.
But-
If we expanded that to 500 feet, there's probably most of Tioga would be
Not
no
to-
longer
That's in the
allowed.
general business zone, but I think the business park's a little bit different because again, you've got condominiums, you've got the elder care facility, and then you've got shops and businesses, and someone wants to put a gas station up. I'm wondering if it should be a higher standard to make sure that they're further away because just about anything can go in there. Whereas when you buy a residential property and it's zoned residential, you know where the general business zone is, and you know there's a possibility that, you're going to have businesses next to you. So that's all I was.
Fair
asking
enough.
for.
Yeah, no, when we did the research on 100 feet separation distance between fuel pumps to residential, when we did that research, we were looking at all the zones in mind, trying to create something that would be a uniform approach to this use. You're certainly allowed to change and have different separation distances versus different zones. I would probably say if you had to pick a zone where there's closest proximity between residential to business, it probably is our general business where, it's right on Tioga, but right behind them.
But there's no
a
lot
of
big enough to
residential.
get that separation, as you just pointed out. Whereas when you're in the business park, like the size of those parcels, Walmart, BJ's, Home Depot, you could put a gas station almost anywhere. And the next thing you know, you're like, wait a minute, it's 100 feet. 100 feet isn't that far.
No.
Far at all.
Yeah.
Doug, is there a national standard that's out there that you're
There's not
aware of?
one hard and fast standard. No, it comes down to community preference. I can tell you, there's surrounding communities that we researched that did have some code that would indicate the siting of these. No one had code that was as conservative as 100 feet. So, I mean, there's communities that allow gas stations and you can line them up right next to residential, no problem. We were thoughtful about that. We wanted to take a more conservative tact. That's the position that we put this in. Obviously, it's up to the commission, and ultimately what you're voting on is, again, it's just a communication tool to the council. The council might see this as something that might need changes. It's hard to predict where they may see changes.
Is there a standard number of pipes versus size of tank that's kept on a property? You know what I'm getting at?
No, I do. You're talking about the underground storage tank.
Pumps, there's a big difference, I think, between 15 pumps and 5 pumps.
Yeah.
When you're dropping a tank and should something happen, the amount of space that's required for distance, fire and whatnot.
No, this code doesn't currently contemplate, for example, size of underground storage tanks and how that would affect separation distances. So it's fair to say this code did not contemplate, for example, if you have 5 pumps, it means you're going to have a tank of this size and we're more comfortable being close. And if you have 20 pumps, we didn't contemplate that. It's also fair to say when we did our research, this proposal is probably some of the most complicated gas station code that would exist, and it's not that complicated. All we're really suggesting is separation distances. We didn't see any community that seemed to wish to regulate gas stations through sizes of tanks or number of pumps.
Yeah.
There is, just look at what's going on right now with Buc-ee's. When you're throwing in, I think it was 100 and something pumps that they're attempting to put into a area that's close to a residential.
Where's
When
this?
you look at the Buc-ee's, you've never heard of Buc-ee's? One of the biggest gas stations in the country. They have about 100 tanks.
I've never heard of it. Where is it?
100, they're mostly down south. They got 100 pumps, and there's huge uproar over it because the size of a tank that's required for 100 pumps, right? So the more pumps you have, the bigger size of a tank you're gonna, and if something should happen, the bigger explosion you're gonna have.
Well, you could have multiple tanks, or you could fill them more
You
off.
could, but is that something we should look at some point?
That all gets reviewed through the underground storage tank program at
Yeah.
DEM, and we'll have to have a permit from that.
How many
program.
tanks is Walmart? Just this ordinance I'm looking at separate but just how many tanks is Walmart looking at?
I don't know how many tanks they're looking at.
Sorry, how many pumps?
I think it's 6.
Okay.
I think
That's smaller than.
I'm pulling that-
BJ's.
BJ's.
it's not real big.
I have had some experience working with gas stations, some repeat customers in my daytime job, and it seems that they have 3 tanks. They're like kind of a uniform size and they just fill them more often. One for the premium, one for the know,
That's what I was gonna say. They have
89,
different grades
87,
of
'cause you can
gasoline.
only
They-
fit so many for the variety. And then if they sell diesel, that's a 4th tank. You can only fit so many on there, even if they have 10 pumps across with double. Actually, there's more. There's like, yeah, I guess it would be at least 10, probably 6 times 2, at least probably 12 pumps and some of them. And they're a little tight, but,
And they have the 100-foot buffer, but they also, you still have the landscape screening requirement in here, so. But
well, I don't see any issues. Anybody else have any comments, concerns on this one?
Anyone else that wants to speak on it?
Yeah, let's find out. Anyone in the audience? There's no one left. How about on Zoom? Anybody on Zoom want to speak for or against either ordinance, 18 or 19, dealing with gasoline stations, filling stations? Don't see any. And this was just for public comment, not hearing. So,
And Doug, any gas station that would come in this area would go to through planning and, correct?
Yeah, any gas station would trigger a minor land development if it's under 7,500,
Yep.
major if it's over. So yeah, we get a chance to see it. This one at Walmart is under. That means that it would go through TRC. There'd be an ad in the paper. Planning staff would review it. Other departments would review it. It gets a full, like fire, for example, gets to review it. Fire can ask questions if they see about fire safety issues. So I would ask if you're considering making a motion, you could consider whether you want to make a combined motion on these two ordinances, 18 and 19, or if you want to separate them and make separate motions.
I'm fine with both.
I'm fine with combining them too.
Okay, if you combine them, just remember there's two planning department memorandums to reference. Just say both or whatever.
Do you mind, David, if they come combined?
If there's no,
Thank you.
what's that?
It's only a recommendation, so I don't have any problem with
Oh, okay,
combining.
yeah. Yep. Okay, so if someone wants to make a motion for a recommendation,
I'll try this one. Sure, I'd like to make a positive recommendation to the town council for ordinance 2026-18 and 2026-19. I find them to be consistent with the standards for the findings of facts set forth in Rhode Island general law, section 45, 24, 52 in the Coventry zoning, section 255-110 with regard to the town of Coventry's comprehensive plan and the purposes of the zoning code. I'd like to forward both staff recommendations to the town council.
I'll second that motion.
okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. Motion carries, favorable recommendation. Okay, let's see what's left. Anything else?
Director's report?
Director's report, subdivision and land development regulations.
I'll only report to suggest that there are a few changes that we've been working on. You won't expect them for next month, but we're looking at some roadway standard changes, some other miscellaneous changes. If the commission members themselves have ideas that they may wish to suggest that we review and come back with, we're all ears. From what I've heard, is I believe there's an interest in coming back with some analysis related to bond requirements and the length of time we can hold a bond, how much we have to give partial releases on bonds over time. I think that the idea was you wanted information on what state law allows, what are the boundaries of state law, so you could have information to consider changes to these subregs. Staff are very happy to do that. I don't mind at all. We're going to leave this subdivision and land development regulations under director's report for a while because we're actively working on it. I don't mind if the commission brings ideas, questions during this agenda item. So you'll have it, and we'll see if we can have something for you next month. If not, it'll be soon.
Anyone have anything to add to that? Yeah, that sounds like, yeah, if we could track that legislation and then revisit at least that one item for now. Sure, there'll be more. Okay, with that being said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. It is now 9:36.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second. We have a motion by Mr. Price, a second by Member Burke. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Better not be. Thank you all. It was a